this meeting to order. Can you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next order of business is the approval of the meeting agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Dr. Francis, do we have a second? Ms. Dayton? All those in favor of approving the meeting agenda? 7-0. Thank you very much. All right, so the next order of business is our consent agenda. Could we get a motion to pass our consent agenda? Dr. Francis, get a second. Ms. Dayton? All right, we're on a roll here. All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda? All right, that passes 7-0. Thank you. And we are on to the school welcome, Mr. Weiss. And as he's walking up here, the reason we're starting a little late tonight is we had a little thing honoring the distinguished teachers that you're going to hear about. We want to thank the Riverside administration and PTA for hosting us for that. Thank you.
Well, good evening and welcome to Riverside School. I would like to first acknowledge our strings teacher, Mr. Barry Hoffman, and the Riverside students performing in our strings quartet earlier this evening. They're in the back. If they want to wave, and I'll name their names if I can. There they are in the middle. And we have Oliver Shepard, so wave Oliver, and Ruth Munn, and Pete Hoffman, and Reese Clark. So thank you. Beautiful music. Thank you to Mr. Hoffman. I also want to thank the Riverside PTA presidents, Mrs. Jen Wolf and Mrs. Sarah Morris, and the members of our PTA Executive Board for hosting a reception for our community just before our meeting today. And as the proud principal of Riverside School, our entire community of teachers, staff members, students, and parents, along with our assistant principal, Ms. Safi Key, would like to welcome you to this very special place of learning. I am honored to welcome Board of Education Chair Peter Bernstein, each of the members of the Board of Education, Superintendent Gilday, Cabinet and staff members from the Greenwich Public Schools, members of the public, families, and students, as well as the 6 very fine teachers that I had the pleasure of speaking with earlier this evening, the 2018 Greenwich Distinguished Teacher Honorees. Congratulations. And last year during my greeting, I shared about our journey as a school to see the vision of the graduate realized in our students as they completed elementary school and moved on to middle and then high school. I ended with a video of our 2-day Global Cardboard Challenge event. And this year, as part of our work with personalized learning and in alignment with the vision of the graduate, capacities such as communicating effectively for a given purpose, advocating for causes, ideas, and actions, generating innovative, creative ideas and products, collaborating with others to produce a unified work and heightened understanding, and to pursue unique interests, passions, and curiosities, all of those things, we would like to share with you an example of our work developing and sharing student voice here at school. We strive to hear from and share the thoughts, ideas, and innovative discoveries of our students as they imagine, create, design, and contribute to their class, the school, to the Greenwich community, and ultimately to the world. This fall, Cece, a 4th grade student here at Riverside, shared with me that she wanted to do more to promote kindness. I shared with her about the Great Kindness Challenge, a worldwide movement to promote kindness in schools. In an effort to further promote student voice in the life of our school, I asked her if she wanted to head up a Great Kindness Challenge campaign here. She eagerly accepted, and along with her friends Gemma and Lily, all 4th graders, they produced a whole campaign from start to finish, which our school participated in this past February. I will end my time with this video showing their work, including videos shared with all of our students, as well as a reflection on how sharing their voice impacted their lives and the lives of their classmates here at school. Enjoy the video.
Hi, our names are Gemma and Cece.
Hi, I'm
going to be talking to you about the Great Kindness Challenge. The Great Kindness Challenge is for 1 whole week where we spread kindness around the school. And some ideas are smile at 25 people, or give 5 compliments to people, and also make a new friend. And those are some really good examples of spreading kindness. And we really just want people to have a good time spreading kindness to people, to make people happy and smile. And that's what we're going to try to do for 1 whole week. It's going to be from February 5th to February 9th. If you have your own ideas of spreading kindness to people too, that would be awesome because you're showing it in your way of being kind.
Some other acts of kindness you can do are if someone drops something, pick it up for them. Or if you see someone all alone at recess, just help them or go play with them because that's a really nice thing.
Thank you for listening and learning about the Great Kindness Challenge.
Hi everybody, I'm Gemma.
I'm Cece.
And I'm Lily.
Enjoy the video. Kindness is cool at Riverside School.
So we asked kids, what does kindness mean to you?
And here are their answers. Adorable for my friends. That's really nice.
It's when we start helping too. It means doing something to go out of your comfort zone. Well, kindness can mean doing this to someone, or when you hold the door, or when you get a friend for someone, you know, after kindness. Being kind to people, being nice to people, doing good deeds.
Next question. What are some kind deeds that relate to kindness?
Let's say someone,
To me, kindness is about respect, being respectful to others, and you want them to be respected.
All right, so ladies, tell me about your experience running the Great Kindness Challenge.
Well, it was a lot of fun to do it because it just feels good to make other people feel good.
I agree with Gemma. I mean, it was really fun to be able to see all the smiles on everyone's face this week. People making people feel good and all the compliments people were giving. And especially like seeing everyone do a good act of kindness makes me feel good that other people are spreading kindness too. So I personally really like this.
It just generates a positive influence over the school, and it gives people a reason to be kind. Not that they need a reason, but it gives them a reason to be super kind.
And being kind is one of the most important things that you can do. And this is such a good example of people being kind to each other.
All right. Thank you again to Gemma, Lily, and Cece. Welcome to Riverside School and have an enjoyable evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, so next up is our student and staff recognition, some amazing feats. So what we're going to do is we'll have our recognition portion of the meeting. I would ask that you all stay until that's done. I would ask the students to think about staying until the student government leaders have spoken. Usually we let people leave immediately after the recognitions, but you may want to stick around and hear from your peers. So we're going to head over to the podium. So first up is the boys swimming and diving state class double L and open champions. Coach Lowe, if you want to come down.
They always do so well.
It's an annual thing. You're up. Are you going to be here? I'll let you step. Yeah, okay, we'll step out.
I don't want to be in front.
That's better. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the members of the 2018 State Champion Cardinal Swimming and Diving Team. Despite 3 one-sided losses during the regular dual meet season, the team continued to work with a uniquely high level of determination to reverse the outcome of those meets. Despite the odds, they succeeded in doing so, winning the FCX, State Double L, and State Open titles. First up, Mackenzie Baxter, a senior, will be on his way to Lehigh next year, a wonderful sprint freestyler for us. Thomas Cass, a 9th grader who made it all the way to the State Open in the 500 freestyle. Charlie Clark, a 10th grader and elected next year's captain, a tremendous sprint freestyler who is the anchor of both of our relays. Andrew Dower, a senior backstroker who came through with great performances at the Double L's this year. Nicholas de la Sierra, a sprint freestyler who anchored our medley relay. Patrick King, a senior sprint freestyler and who will be off to the University College of Dublin in Ireland next year, where he will be swimming. Next, a freshman, Christian Lanuza, who a very versatile swimmer who did big things for us in the 500 freestyle at the State Open. Thomas Lewis, a sophomore who is elected as captain for next year's team, an IMer and breaststroke swimmer for us at the States this year. Matthew Lee, a backstroker and captain of this year's team, will be off to the University of Michigan next year. Matthew Lorenko, a sophomore who had a great season going all the way with the breaststroke this year. Ryan Lynch, a captain of this year's team, will be on his way to Tufts next year where he'll be swimming. A freshman, Nicholas Malco, who has a great season as a sprint freestyler and backstroker. Michael McNulty, a diver who had his first trip to the State Open this year and a great season. Mark Merson, a sprint freestyler who led off our 200 freestyle relay this year. James Pascal, another freshman who had a great season as a flyer and just as freestyler. Alex Pavukas, who came through big for us in both fly and backstroke this year. Segundo Reinhardt, who will be off to Colgate next year to swim, who was part of our gold medal freestyle relay at State this year. Andres Rue, who was all the way to the State Open in the 200 freestyle this year. He is a sophomore. Kurt Schultz, a captain of this year's team, who will be on his way to Roger Williams to swim next year. He was a great distance man for us this year. And finally, one of our top all-around swimmers, terrific flyer and IMer, gold medalist in the IM at the Double L's this year, Stefan Todorovic, a junior who will be a freestyler for us next year. It will be a captain for us for the 2019 team, and I could not possibly skip tonight without at least congratulating and thanking my coaches this year who really helped make it possible. TJ Bruno, who joined us this year, was a fabulous addition to our staff, and the other 2 members, Lori Okayam and our diving coach, Sergei Mershesky, who is with 3 of our other divers today down in Fort Lauderdale at a national championship. But these are the members of our State Double L and State Open Championship team. Thank you.
Thanks, team. That's a lot of tall guys. All right, so next up is the girls gymnastics State L and Open champions. Coach Knight, you want to come on down?
And my assistant coach.
And your assistant coach.
Oh, there she is. Hello, everyone. Tonight we would like to congratulate the GHS gymnastic team for their achievements they have accomplished this season, which is first place FCAC championship, first place CIAC divisional championship, first place CIAC state open championship, which I think is the first in the history of the school, second place New England championship, and also the girls have received All-American Team Award from the National High School Gymnastics Association. Alphabetical order, Gianna Cardini, Valerie Sella, Nat Cruz, Aneris de Jesus, Kelsey Fedorko, Angelique Beshore, Claudia Lopez,
Congratulations.
Ellie Moreno, Celine Perrin, Siha Perrin, Sydney Steele, who is not here, Allie Trotman, Nika Sibley, and Juliet Freehite.
So much.
All right, coaches, why don't you get on in? You guys have to squeeze together. Last but certainly not least, it gives me great honor to move on to the 2018 Distinguished Teacher Award recipients. Ms. Sherwin, who is the chair of the committee, will come and present that.
Thank you very much. Good evening. It is my pleasure to represent the Distinguished Teacher Awards Committee and introduce the class of 2018 Distinguished Teachers to you. This is our 34th year of celebrating the exceptional teaching of our staff in the Greenwich Public Schools. Selection of the 6 distinguished teachers is done by our 20-member committee, which include Board of Education representatives Lauren Rabin and Megan Olson, representatives from the PTA Council, the Greenwich Education Association, the Greenwich Organization of School Administrators, the Kiwanis, and the community at large. The committee is heavily indebted to the support it receives from Kim Eves and Mike Antonocchio in the Communications Office. Thank you. You're in for a real treat tonight as I present to you 6 individuals who are passionate about the work they do and who strive to inspire our children to become lifelong learners, global citizens, problem solvers, and innovators. But just to change things up a bit, we've decided to let the teachers with names that begin the alphabet feel what it's like to have a name that starts at the end. So tonight, please welcome our first distinguished teacher, Mrs. Megan White. Megan White has been teaching in the Greenwich schools for 8 years. She has one of the most unique teaching positions in the Greenwich Public Schools, for she is a teacher of the hearing impaired, and as such, works with students from pre-K through high school. Mary Ford took issue with the description of Megan's title, however, and stated she is not a teacher of the deaf and hearing impaired. She is a teacher of children who have hearing impairments. Mrs. White finds the unique talents and strengths of each of her students and then uses her skills to make sure that their disabilities do not present barriers to the full expression of these gifts. She not only teaches students, but also their teachers and their parents, giving each member of a child's teaching team strategies to help the student succeed in school and at home. She understands that what may seem like just another battery or earpiece is actually the doorway into the instructional world for students with hearing impairments. The world of hearing loss is constantly changing and evolving. Technology is improving drastically in her field as well, and Megan works tirelessly to stay abreast of the best practices and curriculum to benefit her students. Remember, they range from pre-K to seniors in high school. Mrs. White's colleagues shared that she is honest with students as to why they need accommodations, and she does not allow students to use their hearing loss as an excuse. She will go that extra mile with a student and his or her teachers to accommodate a child's interests and to eliminate any barriers that may interfere with successes. One of Mrs. White's parents shared that she communicates with compassion and understanding, gaining the trust of parents and students. She empowers parents by teaching best practices for managing hearing loss in daily life at home as well as in the classroom. She equips her students to embrace their challenges and strive to reach their highest potential. Her abundant faith in her students and their abilities to succeed teaches them to believe that their disability does not define them or limit their capacity for outstanding achievement in any area of their lives. Congratulations, Mrs. White. Eleanor Rich. Eleanor has been teaching English for 14 years, the past 12 of which she's been teaching at the Greenwich High School. It's clear that she brings to life many of the classics that might challenge any normal high school student. Charles Dickens' Great Expectation, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and Shakespeare's sonnets. Offering choices as to how they will respond to these works, her students might choose to memorize and present a Shakespearean sonnet that can later be presented in the Poetry Out Loud contest in the spring, or they might write an original sonnet for publication in the school literary magazine. Am I pronouncing right, the Greenwich? Okay. Mrs. Rich's enthusiasm and warmth build confidence in students to complete rigorous learning activities, and her students know she sets the academic expectation bar high. One student expressed gratitude for the way Ms. Rich encouraged him to experiment with unconventional approaches to assignments, and in the process supported the development of his unique literary voice. 10 years after completing her undergraduate work, and while teaching full-time, she went back to school for a master's degree in English. Ms. Rich brought back into her classroom strategies that her graduate professors at Columbia University used in her graduate classes. So now her high school students are asked to send brief emails to their entire class about what they found interesting in an assigned reading. That's what I call a fantastic way to hold kids accountable for getting that reading assignment done. She also instituted You Teach units in some of her seminars. Her students find out pretty quickly that you really have to understand a concept if you're going to teach it to a classroom of peers. Her colleagues recognize how her remarkably high level of professionalism elevates the level of discourse in the classroom and leads her students to put forth their best effort. One student even quipped, "If you get a B from Mrs. Rich, that essay could be published." Congratulations, Mrs. Rich. Next is Frank Kovach. Frank Kovach, you're right. Frank Kovach has been teaching social studies and AVID courses for 16 and a half years, all at Greenwich High School. Mr. Kovach can't wait to get to class every day. His students start their day being serenaded with his original daily planner song, and they respond to attendance by answering to a rather imaginative nickname he has created based on something they've accomplished. Mr. Kovach knows the value of getting to know his students as the whole child, learning their interests and challenges, weaknesses and strengths. Taking the time to carefully build a foundation of trust and understanding, Mr. Kovach knows enthusiasm for content and skills will follow. He rewards curiosity with praise and isn't afraid to dip into his coveted prize box to celebrate a risk one of his students has taken. Although these small trinkets are given out in a lighthearted way, highlighting or exploding the moment of a student's learning means a great deal to his kids. Mr. Kovach recognizes that ultimately, he must be willing and open to failure as well, which is so important for a growth mindset he strives to instill in his students. And he often says he takes what he does seriously, but doesn't take himself too seriously. He believes this protects his ego when he tries something new that ends in what his students are happy to point out is an epic fail. Mr. Kovach spends a great deal of energy creating an achievement-oriented classroom as opposed to a competitive one. His colleague commented that he is a master at relationship building. Nowhere is this more evident than in the relationships he nurtures in the work he does for his AVID students. Whether it's attending their wrestling meets, high school club special events, or visiting students at their jobs, Mr. Kovach shows his students how much he values them. In June of 2019, 100% of the 24 AVID students in Mr. Kovach's class were accepted to college and earned over $2.5 million in scholarships. His colleagues agree Mr. Kovach is a consummate professional who never loses sight of the essential purpose of a teacher, which is to help and guide students to achieving their potential. Congratulations, Mr. Kovach. Michelle Gerlando de Rosa. Mrs. Gerlando de Rosa has been teaching 7th and 8th grade English for 8 years, 7 of them at Western Middle School. I must admit I was a little surprised when I read that at last year's 8th grade graduation, I'm going to call her Mrs. G, I'm sorry. It's as much as I could get it out twice the right way. Mrs. G, they call her that, students gave her a homemade t-shirt that proclaimed her class slogan, "Grades don't matter." I guess her students were initially as confused as I was, because at first they argued with their teacher's slogan. Then she explained that the statement wasn't entirely true. Grades do matter, but not as much as learning, and that is the message Mrs. G instills in her students. When our 8-out students, or advanced students, accustomed to earning easy A's, see a B on their first paper, they frequently get upset. Mrs. G explains that your paper needs to get me thinking, then you'll get an A. She loves presenting a variety of lessons that keep her students enthusiastic, engaged, and thinking for themselves. Sometimes students enter her room to music playing or pictures or numbers hanging from the ceiling. Other times they find themselves using a paintbrush instead of a pencil. They know that it will all tie together. They just need to think on it. She doesn't settle for stagnant thinking or settle for good. She demands excellence and has found that her students rise to her challenge. Mrs. G is also a risk taker. Whipping up a batch of blueberry muffins last winter in her kitchen, she wasn't sure any of her students would show up the next morning before school to join her for breakfast and a movie. That previous summer, Mrs. G had spent time in Europe with a number of educators and returned with wonderful materials that she was having trouble fitting into her regular curriculum class time. So, a breakfast club was born, and pretty soon, a large community of learners, not all of them her students, We're enjoying movies, stories, and lively conversations beyond the curriculum, all before school. Congratulations, Mrs. Yolanda de Rosa. Miss Giametti. Miss Lisa Giametti has been teaching for 27 years, 20 of them teaching 3rd grade at North Miami School. If asked to give advice to a former student considering a career in teaching, Mrs. Giametti would answer with a number of questions. Are you flexible, passionate, organized? Can you dedicate yourself wholly and completely? Are you a pioneer? She'd ask whether you are a risk taker and able to create new pathways for your children. Ms. Giametti would ask these questions because she knows this is what it takes to be the teacher your students will always remember. She finds herself thinking of amazing ideas in the shower and losing sleep over how to reach a child. She knows one of the most important lessons she teaches is how she isn't afraid to make mistakes in front of her class, modeling how you need to believe in your mistakes and how struggles lead to new learning. She encourages her kids to never be satisfied with good enough, but to strive for excellence. Her final question to this potential new teacher and her answer will give you a small peek into the passion that inspires Miss Giametti every day. Here in her own words, do you love children? This may seem like a silly question, but it is the most important. Your love for children will get you out of bed every morning and drive you to work. It will keep you shining through those stormy days of data deadlines, evaluations, and messy paperwork with which you truly can't be bothered. It will keep you young at heart and in spirit, even when you go home so emotionally drained you wish you could will the day to be Friday instead of just Tuesday. It keeps you coming back every day because there is absolutely nothing more rewarding than witnessing the amazing transformation education provides. You should know that one of the best parts of teaching is it really matters, and one of the most challenging parts is you have to make every moment matter. Congratulations, Ms. Giametti. Okay, so how does it feel to be last? I present, last but not least, Karin Ball. Mrs. Ball has been teaching middle school for 23 years, all in Greenwich, and for the past 16 years, she's been a media specialist at Central Middle School and currently at Eastern Middle School. When he first arrived at the Eastern Middle School as principal, Ralph Mayo recalled that the media center was always empty, rarely used by staff or students, and the collections were extremely old and out of date. Today, thanks to the creativity and passion of Mrs. Ball, the Media Center is the hub of the school. It's a vibrant, engaging space where the staff and students will find constantly updated resources and a safe place to socialize before and after school. This is because Mrs. Ball works day and night to transform the space and add resources and change the climate of the Media Center into a positive one. When the school district began preparing for implementation of the digital learning environment, basically going from a single computer lab servicing one class at a time to providing every student in the district with an iPad or a Chromebook, Mrs. Ball was a leader in the pilot program for grade 6 rollout. Recognizing that there just could be a few hiccups in this process, Mrs. Ball created Digital Bootcamp, a series of lessons to prepare students to make good decisions using their Chromebooks both in and out of the school building. These lessons were shared with Central and Western Middle Schools during the district rollout. I understand that during the 2-year Chrome pilot and rollout at Eastern, Mrs. Ball was known for carrying her laptop around her home all weekend long, answering concerns from panicked students, parents, and faculty. On top of all this, Mrs. Ball reads insatiably so that she's up on the latest authors and can lead exciting book talks that inspire a passion for reading. She's been compared to a literary magician who is able to ensure that all students go home with a book in their hands that they're excited to read. As one of her students said it best, whenever she introduces new books, I get hooked. Congratulations, Mrs. Ball. As we wrap up tonight, thank you so much. I'd just like to mention that I hope you'll come out and support these wonderful teachers at the Distinguished Teacher Awards ceremony, which will be Tuesday, May 1st, 4:30 at the Greenwich High School PAC. So I hope you can come. Thank you so much.
So the next portion of our meeting is the public hearing. If there's any students and they want to stay for the student high school leaders, those are our next speakers.
Chairman Bernstein, Dr. Gilday, members of the board, good evening. First, I would like to congratulate our distinguished teachers. You truly inspire me personally and every student in our district. We are so lucky to be in a district with such an amazing faculty. So while many of you get to hear what comes out of student government, you really never get to hear about what goes on behind the scenes because frankly, most of the time it's pretty boring. But I have some exciting news this time. As a quick background, we have 186 amazing representatives that are truly special people from all walks of life. Once a month, we have a mass meeting that we used to do a general open mic session. However, with some great advice from our administration, including Dr. Gilday over some good pizza and Mr. Raven, we have changed our open mic format to targeted breakout groups in order to promote more participation from students and have everyone's voices heard. Each group gets to discuss a relevant issue of their choice, create an action plan, and then have a rep report back to the whole group and summarize exactly what they had talked about. The format has been a huge success. For our last meeting, it was only fitting to have a group targeted on school end time, of course, which I told Elisa to take care of that. Elisa will share you the incredible ideas and concerns that we've learned from our very own peers. Also, student government election packets are out, and the elections will be held in May. Additionally, junior prom is this weekend, and I didn't get invited, but they are set up for a great time because the junior class has done a phenomenal job fundraising for the event. Some other exciting news out of GHS, one of my favorite events of the year, the Food Truck Fair, is scheduled for May 12th. It will be a day of delicious food, bake sales, student performances, and other activities. This year, there was 186 kids voted to donate 20% of the proceeds to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and the event is open to everybody in the public, and we hope to see as many people there for a great time and a great cause. Thank you.
Chairman Bernstein, Dr. Gilday, and members of the board. As Greg has mentioned, we have adapted many aspects of student government this year. We have grown in size, and to accommodate this change, we changed our mass meetings to focus on targeted breakout groups. At our last meeting, I helped run the breakout group regarding start and end time. We allowed the students to choose between discussing the AP hard cap, improvements for student government next year, making GHS environmentally friendly, and the start and end time. The start and end time group was chosen by half of the students. At the start of the discussion, the first thing I realized was that start time isn't debated. The students like the 8:30 start. They say they feel more awake, energized, and ready for the day by starting 1 hour later. The problem lies in end time. Students say that they can't focus and even fall asleep in their last block classes. Even after school activities were discussed due to the issues with timing and traffic. Students can't work or volunteer for as much time as they want or need because of the late start time or end time. When it was established that the end time was the real issue, students began to brainstorm solutions. Many ideas were discussed, such as adding 30 minutes to the end of the day for study hall or cutting passing time by a minute or so. But most ideas revolved around cutting blocks by 4 or 5 minutes to save time at the end of the day. The students see the difference between ending at 3:45 versus 3:15 versus 2:45, and believe by shortening classes they will be more focused within the shorter blocks. This targeted breakout group platform has strongly increased the amount of information student government has received on topics as impactful as this. Throughout the year, student government has focused on student activism, showing students that their opinions do matter. This information is crucial to all decisions being made on next year's start and end time, and I hope that these students' voices will be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Carol Sutton, who represents the GEA teachers.
Good evening, Mr. Weiss, Chairman Bernstein, and board members, Dr. Gilday, and members of the cabinet and members of the community. My name is Carol Sutton, and I'm honored to represent 900 plus members of the Greenwich Education Association. On behalf of the GEA, I'd like to extend congratulations to the boys swim team and to the girls gymnastics team, and most especially to the class of 2018 distinguished teachers. What a wonderful night for all Greenwich teachers as we come together to recognize 6 of our own. Karin, Lisa, Ellie, Frank, Megan, and Michelle represent the qualities that make Greenwich teachers the best of the best. They are lifelong learners who inspire their students and their colleagues. They contribute tirelessly to their school communities, and equipped with only the tools of broad content knowledge, enthusiasm, and humanity, they build the next generation. And they do it for years, year after year. I hope you'll all join us on May 1st when their celebration continues at the high school at 4:30. But after looking at our distinguished teachers and the conditions in which they work, it's hard not to miss that there's been a lot of news lately about places where prospects are not so bright for teachers, learners, or their families. Places like West Virginia, Oklahoma, Kentucky, and Arizona. According to a recent Gallup poll, teachers are the 3rd most trusted profession, behind nurses and military officers. Yet, their salaries, adjusted for inflation, have been stagnant for 20 years. And they lag behind the average of all college graduates. Another poll, this one by the Learning Policy Institute, revealed that 6.6% of teachers across the country want to leave the profession as quickly as possible. And the number of college freshmen interested in going into education is down to 4.6%. That's down 5% in 10 years. Finally, those states in which teachers have taken action recently have cut their education like there is no tomorrow, literally no tomorrow, because that's the only way you would cut education. Arizona, it's been 25%. Oklahoma, 15%. So they have, don't tell this to the students, but they have 4-day weeks, which sounds fun until you think about what the cost is in terms of their education and their future. So fortunately, these stories are far different from the stories told about our distinguished teachers. Most days, most teachers in Greenwich arrive to school joyful, full of energy, feeling valued and supported. And we are grateful. So on this day that we celebrate our distinguished teachers, please remember that teachers are a valuable yet finite resource. In fact, in some places, they're an endangered species. And that's why it's up to all of us to ensure, with whatever means necessary, that the environment in which they teach and our students learn remains fertile and sustainable here in Greenwich. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Our next speaker is Karin Hirsch from the PTA Council.
Good
Good evening, Dr. Gilday, Chairman Bernstein, Principal Weiss, members of the board, cabinet, and community. I'm Karin Hirsch, President of the Greenwich PTA Council. We would like to thank Riverside School for hosting tonight and congratulate the boys swimming and diving and the girls gymnastics champions. Council also congratulates this year's Dtac nominees and award recipients. As always, there were a large number of impressive nominees, which simply proves how incredibly invaluable our educators are, and why it is so important that we support the Board of Ed budget without suggesting reductions in headcount. Council was pleased to be a participant on the school start and dismissal time steering committee. As we represent over 9,000 students, their parents, and teachers across 15 schools, it should come as no surprise that we have heard many varied responses and opinions. We will strive to share as many viewpoints as possible and continue to advocate for good process. Good process means consistently working to educate and inform all stakeholders and allow for fair and balanced public opinion input. Good policy design includes regular reviews, something that the board has consistently done with any policy or program change over the years. Change is not easy, and it would be misguided to reactively abandon it when challenges arise, and it's equally ill-advised not to assess change and make adjustments as appropriate. Good process also means being comprehensive and objective, looking at all data points to inform decisions, not just the points that bolster a particular opinion or desired outcome. We need to make sure that the data comparison is apples to apples. For example, the stated objective for bell time change was not necessarily to improve academic outcome. However, Council is very interested in learning more about this relationship, but also notes numerous articles in the media over the past few weeks discussing national trends of flat or lower test scores. Separating these trends from start time will not be easy. We all want to offer our students the best academic opportunities available while supporting their health and wellness, and no one disagrees that our students need better sleep, nor disputes scientific evidence that later start times better coincide with teenage circadian rhythms. However, supporting student health and working to solve the issues that have arisen along with bell time changes are not mutually exclusive. The challenge now is understanding how this change impacts academics, sleep, and stress, and requires us all to work together, be flexible, and find solutions. It should come as no surprise that the staff and parent surveys show a division of opinion that makes a clear assessment of change difficult. We must look at the report as simply one data point amongst many. The majority of the respondents were teachers, parents, or students at the high school, those directly affected by the change. However, there weren't an adequate number of responses from families and staff in the elementary or middle schools. We must acknowledge that middle schoolers seem to have been overlooked. Are we simply just assuming that the small change made at the middle school level is negligible? Survey responses are also inherently anecdotal. Why are we asking families for information about academic outcomes? Wouldn't we get more valid data via ECRIS or Aspen? And couldn't the same be said of metrics on late arrivals, early dismissals, and missed class time? With data from our current reporting systems, we could compare figures from the same month from year to year and compare trends. While most of the parent responses show an overall majority response of no effect when asked how bell times changes have impacted them in a variety of ways, we must listen closely to the feedback given to us by students, as this change was instituted to benefit them. Survey results show that our students place more value on the end time over start time and stated a clear preference for an earlier release, while showing no clear preference for a specific start time. There is no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to student health. Nationwide, each school community has different needs and challenges, and yet there seems to be a standardized approach to scheduling and delivering education. Let's take this as an opportunity to find a creative solution for concerns such as student missing academic time at the end of the day. Does this mean that we must change the start of the day again? Not necessarily. It could mean looking at delivering education in new ways, taking advantage of personalized learning, creating online or virtual classes for students, or modifying block scheduling. While many have focused on the impact this has had on our student athletics, Council notes that the survey shows it had a significant negative impact on extracurricular activities in general, and we shouldn't be indifferent to this finding. There also seems to be a disparity of impact based on different student populations. Council is reluctant to say that the opinions and needs of one group matters more than those of another. However, where such differences call for conflicting remedies, we need to make sure that we do not ignore the needs of our most vulnerable students. Change often highlights already existing problems, and indeed, many of the concerns being discussed were already issues for the town. Lack of lighted and well-maintained fields, traffic, student stress, and the list goes on. We are now focused on these due to the change in bell times, and the district must equally focus their efforts to ameliorate these issues. Nothing is perfect, and change takes time and requires flexibility and trade-offs. We have the time to adjust school schedules and address other areas of concerns, but the students who are living through this change, they only have one chance at this. We must all work together to make sure that whatever adjustments we implement to benefit our students do not bring other unintended negative consequences. And if measures need to be taken now, please consider the long view. And remember that change is a dynamic process where adjustments can be made until we land at a place that allows for the greatest benefit for everyone. Thank you.
All right, so I know some of our teachers are still here. You're welcome to stay as long as you'd like, but I also know you have school.
What's up, what's up, what's up, what's up?
And we want you fresh first.
Mike, what's up?
All right, so next up is community comments. I'll remind speakers you have 3 minutes to speak. We'll give you a 30-second warning. It's okay. I know we've heard from many of you before. Most of the comments folks have identified are for start time. I'd like to think that the Kindness Week here at Riverside is actually more than a week and that it's still going on. And so what I will do is ask people to show some respect for ideas, respect for people. When you interact with each other, this has become a heated issue for no apparent reason. We are adults, we should model the behavior we expect from our children, so I will ask you to respect the other speakers, whether they agree with your position or not. When you are communicating with people, whether it be other parents, whether it be school administration, school staff, please show respect. I really do appreciate that. I expect that. I think you would too. So with that, we'll move into our community comments. The first speaker signed up is Kendra Pham Finns, and on deck will be Carol Marinelli, and I will apologize for mangling everybody's names in advance.
No worries. My name is Kendra Farn, the R and looks like an M. I grew up in this town. I went through Greenwich Public Schools. I'm a proud graduate of Greenwich High School. And my 8th grader, Paulina Finns, will be in 9th grade next year. I have never been to a Board of Ed meeting. I have certainly never spoken at a Board of Ed meeting, and truthfully never could have dreamed that I would feel the need to be here speaking, but I am. I have been excited, beyond excited, about my daughter's entrance to my alma mater next year, and I have been screaming to the world about how proud I am that my local high school made the hard but historic change this year to an 8:30 start time. Why? Because I have read far more than I ever care to admit about the science behind this. I have heard the speakers, the sleep experts, Wallstrom, Karskadin, you name them. I've heard them all speak about circadian rhythms, about how waking up a teenager at 6 a.m. is like waking me up at 3 a.m. and asking me to be awake and alert and perform and drive in the dark to school in the winter and pay attention in that first class. So while it took Greenwich a lot of courage and a lot of determination and a lot of willpower to get here, it was about the greater good of our kids, and it is worth it. Hundreds of districts across this country have made this change, and the numbers keep growing also right here in Fairfield County. And to my knowledge, only one district in this entire country has ever gone back, and it was for budgetary reasons. And I have a hard time believing that in Greenwich, Connecticut, one of the most affluent towns in this country, that is a problem for us. It is because of the science, the mental and physical health benefits to our children that the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and other leading health agencies recommend an 8:30 school start time for high school. Not 8 o'clock, not 8:10, not 8:20, but 8:30, the earliest. If Fairfax, Virginia, one of the largest and most complex school districts in this country can do it, my God, why can't we? Every obstacle they met, they overcame. Wasn't easy, but they overcame them. So what kind of message are we sending if after only 8 months at it, we're already considering a change? As parents and educators, our motto should always be, if it's good for our kids, then my God, we're going to do it. So if we put sports, logistics, transportation, or revenue that can all be worked out with just a little more effort on the backs of our kids and before their health, safety, and learning, I say shame on us. Thank you.
All right, so Chairwoman Nellie, followed by Lily Marinelli.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm the mother of a current junior and a current sophomore at Greenwich High. I'm a former PTA co-president of Old Greenwich School, and I have an incoming 9th grade student who will start in September. I strongly implore you not to make a decision to roll back the school start time. I can tell you that for my 2 high schoolers, the 8:30 start time has made a huge difference in their well-being, and consequently has had a major impact on our entire family. My 2 girls wake up more easily and go to school feeling like themselves, not like the zombies they were in the past. They report that they fall asleep in class much less frequently than when the start time was 7:30 a.m. Both of my high schoolers are student athletes. They participate in girls' JV swimming and fencing. And while their practices have been pushed later in the afternoon and evening, they still prefer a later start time. Both of them are routinely up until 11 p.m. or midnight because of homework. They were up just as late when the start time was earlier, but now they have an additional important hour to sleep in the morning, and I can assure you it makes a huge difference in their health and well-being. None of the so-called problems that have been cited, such as increased traffic, sports conflicts, etc., are equal in importance to student health. We must and we can find other solutions to those problems. Please do not take away even 15 minutes of that precious morning sleep time. It would seriously jeopardize the quality of life for our family, and I honestly do not think my incoming 9th grader would be able to handle it. Thank you.
All right, Lily Marinelli, followed by Emily Trotman.
Hi, my name is Lily Marinelli. I'm currently a junior at Greenwich High School, and I'm here to talk a little bit about my experience with the start time. During my freshman and sophomore years, the past 2 years, I expected my junior year to be the worst. I expected the workload to go way up and my stress level to rise with it. But strangely enough, this year has been manageable, and I can tell you for sure it is because, or partially because of a later school start time. Although I have a very heavy course load this year, of course, junior year, the hours of sleep I get is more, and the amount of stress I have about that is less than in the prior 2 years, and I know that many of my peers would agree with me. In my first 2 years of high school, it was a daily struggle to keep my eyes open in all of my classes, especially the morning ones. I remember physically dragging myself and my sister out of bed to catch the bus at 6:30 a.m., but it is not the same this year. Yes, I have tons of work, and I probably go to bed later than I should, but I'm more able to wake up. I wake up easier in the morning, and I feel more awake at school, and I think that's really important. So I ask you please not to roll back the school start times. I don't want my peers and I and my younger sister, who's coming to be a freshman next year, to have to drag themselves out of bed every morning. And I know that it would be beneficial to the happiness and the well-being of all of the students. So thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Emily Trotman, followed by Karin Rosenbaum.
Good evening, Board of Education members, Dr. Gilday and Chairman Bernstein. My name is Emily Trotman. I have 2 girls in the Greenwich Public Schools, one in elementary school and one in high school. I really love this district, and I feel incredibly fortunate my children are able to attend these schools. Tonight, 2 teachers that my older daughter has interacted with were recognized, so it's just amazing. I have been a teacher for over 20 years, and I've worked with students from very young children through middle school. I've been trained as a facilitator of parent groups, and this past year I've had the pleasure to meet with parents of children of all ages to hear what's going on at home. I do not see myself as a parenting expert. If my daughter were still here, she would attest to that. but I'm a parent on the journey, and I recognize that we're all doing the best we can. We're all doing what we can to put one foot in front of the other a lot of days, and that we need to forgive ourselves and continue to learn and grow as parents, just as we're asking our children to do. I think parents today are in a really tight spot, and I'm going to take a different route to the school start time, which I am here to support. I think the element of social media in our kids' lives is not slowing down, nor will it. We do not know how it affects their brain development, and I hear so many parents share their fears that their children are becoming addicted to social media, games, and pornography. The rise of depression and anxiety go hand in hand with the isolation that kids feel when spending too much time on their devices. When kids are doing homework, they have access to addictive technologies. And I feel that parents are really stuck in a dilemma that they want, on the one hand, to stay out of their children's lives and let them manage their own work loads, let them develop those skills of self-management. But at the same time, with the technologies that have been designed specifically to draw kids in, to bring them into an addictive relationship with technology, it's too much. It's a lot for us to deal with as parents. I feel like parents need to step in more to regulate and help regulate, because our kids just can't do it for themselves yet. A lot of adults can't do it for themselves. So I think parents are in a tight spot, and I think that as a school district, to keep the start time where it is supporting healthy lifestyles for our kids, and they have a better chance towards mental health. So systems need to be in place for that support healthy families, and I think healthy start times are a part of that. It's been a huge help in my house, and if I had more time, I would tell you about my daughter. She has 4 alarms that go off, various distances from her bed, various volumes. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Is that my alarm?
Exactly. All right, so next up is Karin Rosenbaum, followed by Wheatley Dunham.
Hi, I'm Karin Rosenbaum. I am the mother of 2, one at the high school and one at middle school, and I'm also a recent RTM member, recently elected to the RTM in District 8. First of all, I'm going to congratulate the board for their really brave decision to make this change. And I'm going to start with change is hard. Change is hard, and we have a lot of different opinions, different constituencies, and I think also, beyond being a mother, now being on the RTM and hearing a variety of viewpoints, it's really been an education. But I first want to speak as a mother. My son is a junior, and this year has been such a turnaround for him. It has really been a blessing. I was asking him, I remember how he felt and how much difficulty he had, but I just asked him in the car on the way back from theater, late at night, what the difference was. He said freshman, sophomore year, he struggled first and second block to stay awake. He said he routinely fell asleep. Now he's great through the day, and he's in theater, and which goes very late, and it's year round, and he has to be in every show. So he is up late doing his homework, but he comes home, he's more focused. He gets better quality sleep, and it's energized him. He had a lot of difficulties, health issues. He had migraines, he had sleep difficulties, he had absences. It's really been a turnaround. So I get concerned, honestly, when I hear, I'm so happy about this change, and I get concerned when I hear sort of the chatter about the issues. And I'm not going to, the issues are real. We have logistical challenges, but I think this is an incredible community. We have incredible brain power and creativity, and I think we can, get to work and really look for creative solutions. So I would urge us to look at the benefits, look at the big picture of what we're achieving, recognize, as some other speakers have said, that change is hard. There are challenges, and work together as a community to solve the challenges. And I'm not going to pretend that I have solutions. I don't have solutions right here at the top, at my fingertips, but I think that's really
30 seconds.
Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is, and I am actually, as a business person, a marketing person, and I would look at this survey. I looked at the survey, didn't have time to pull it apart, but as a marketer, I would take it with a lot of caution. I think it was done, and that's an hour. So I think it was done early. There's apples to apples. There's the way the questions were worded with saying very dissatisfied.
Sorry, time.
Anyway, but thank you very much, and thank you for hearing me tonight.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is Lee Dunn, followed by Gabriel Quiroga.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, audience. I'd like to start tonight by thanking the people in that row of tables over there who work night and day tirelessly, extremely hard for all of our children throughout the year. It does not pertain only to start times, but to everything you do for our children. And I think you're the unrecognized, unsung heroes of our school district. And to Ms. Sutton, if you're still here, if you could please echo those sentiments to your amazing, dedicated staff, many of those who were awarded tonight, and to everyone else that stands with you in the classroom. So I want to thank you. I'm going to really shorten what I have to say tonight after hearing what our student government representative said. I really can't add anything more than that. I want to just end my comments with a talk about flexibility, compromise, and medicine. I am all for compromise. I'm all for flexibility, but I'm going to give you an example. Dr. Woodbury gave me a dose of something I really can't pronounce, but it's called cefetodroxil. Is that correct, Dr. Francis? Okay. This is an antibiotic, and it doesn't really sit well with me. It makes me tired. I didn't call Dr. Woodbury and say, can I make a concession? Let's make a deal. No. He said, take this one capsule by mouth twice daily. I said, can I take one a day? No, we don't make concessions. Thousands and thousands of research hours, millions of dollars of research go into designing and manufacturing and putting, instructions on this medication. When the leading medical associations of the United States and the world say uniformly no earlier than 8:30 a.m. start time, which we barely meet, we just meet the minimum at 8:30. I suggest that we now look at concessions or flexibility in that respect. That is bad medicine. That is bad public policy. I will I will yield the remainder of my time to our distinguished chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Gabriel, you're up, followed by, I think it's Andy Quiroga as well.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Gabriel Quiroga, and I'm a junior at Greenwich High School and athlete. I have read the data review and SWOT report of the current state of changing school start times prior to this meeting, and I would like to speak about how this change in start times has affected me academically, as well as in terms of health and sports. I play soccer in the fall for the school, as well as club outside of school in the spring, and I also fence in the winter. This year I did not play soccer in the fall due to injury. However, from August to November, I had to go to physical therapy from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. To recover from surgery, and thus I was more under last year's schedule. And after ending my physical therapy sessions, I realized that once going back to this year's schedule and having only to wake up at 7 a.m. after November instead of 6 a.m., it was much more helpful, and I was able to focus much better in the first two blocks of my first two block classes. And as a consequence, actually, my own GPA has reflected that and has gone up higher each subsequent quarter. I would also like to bring up one concern I have with the implementation process. When I was looking at the two reports, I noticed that the word coach never appeared once in that 78-page document. And I thought that even though we have Gus Lundeen as part of that report, he's just one man, and he cannot account for all the countless coaches that we have and countless sports that we have at GHS. And we have to make sure that those coaches are doing everything they possibly can to help those students, because even though those coaches may have their own day jobs, sports are definitely a bigger part of their lives, and we have, as students, have have many more facets to our lives than they do. And health-wise, I believe I've been getting much higher quality sleep, but I think that even if we revert back to the old schedule, sleep length will not increase and probably in fact decrease. And I think that as a junior, I can speak to the effects of implementation most effectively. There's a big jump from sophomore to junior year, and the college process, which is now kicking in, is taking up a lot of time, which would have been free time or time for homework last year. And there are kids who are taking double or more than double the APs last year. In fact, I am one of the kids who are taking double. Instead of 2 APs, I'm taking 4 APs. And there are even kids who are taking APs this year who have never taken them before. And we have to take that into account. And we have to notice that they need to sleep. They need to be able to be prepared and be effective in class. And therefore, I would like to conclude by saying that the start time has positively impacted me personally, and I believe that it has also helped the majority of the student body. And though I cannot comment on the effects of changing start time for adults, I believe it is crucial to continue this experimentation and refinement process further. We have all spent 8 months now acclimating and adjusting to this, and reverting to the old schedule would result in the waste of resources and time that all Greenwich citizens and out-of-town GHS faculty and staff have put in. In other words, ending the pilot prematurely would be a mistake and most likely result in a bigger backlash against the board, Greenwich Public Schools, and the town of Greenwich. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Rosa, followed by Amy Behe.
Good evening. My name is Aude Quiroga, and I'm the mother of 3 boys, two of which graduated from Greenwich High, and Gabriel. I would like to start by thanking the members of the Board of Education for taking the courageous decision to change the school start time. Change, as has been already said, is very difficult, especially when it affects different constituents. No one likes change, and it always takes time to readjust. We always hear more about the inconvenience than the longer-term benefits. And also, we took a long process to decide to implement this change start time, so I'm a little surprised that we're already reconsidering moving back to an earlier time. Especially when this reconsideration seems based on a survey that took place only 2 months after the change. I hear that most of the concerns are coming from parents of athletes. Well, let me talk about my experience, because all my kids were students athletes. My eldest son, who did not benefit from a later start time, was so tired that he needed to nap before or after his practices before he was able to start his homework. We have wonderful sports coaches who dedicated their time to our children. They also have outside jobs and are not always available to coach at 2:30 p.m. So many practices start later. Actually, my son had practice that ended at 9 p.m. So finishing the academic school start earlier would not result in being home earlier. Similarly, a lot of the competition finished late. My kids had to go to New Haven many times in the season for indoor track. So they came back home around 11 p.m. or midnight. So being able to wake up later would have really benefited those athletes. I hear parents complaining about students being dismissed early because of away game and missing class. What about students who missed the first or second period because they came back too late the previous day from a competition? What about students who were too tired because of the lack of sleep, leading to a weaker immune system that got them sick and resulted in them missing several days of school? I am very happy personally with the later start time. It allows me to have breakfast with my child and talk to him before he goes to school. 30 seconds. Before there was no time in the morning and no time in the evening because of practices or competition. So, as my son just told you, he had his best academic result this past marking period, and I would urge the members of the Board of the Education to see more data coming from GHS on academic as well as on overall student well-being before reverting to an earlier start time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amy Behe, followed by Pierre Smith.
Hello, thank you.
First, I'm going to say a couple of comments of my own, which is thank you so much for being brave and changing start time. I've said that dozens of times, but really, I am proud to be from a community where we have leaders that will make a decision and it will reflect. It's going to change the rest of the state. But I have a friend who his daughter goes to Sacred Heart, and I asked if she can come to speak, but she couldn't, so she sent me a letter, which I'm going to read. It's sort of she's a daughter, she has an athlete, and so it's sort of a secondary effect that you might not be aware of, positive. I'm writing to support, her name's Irene Ritchie, I can give you this. I'm writing in support of Greenwich High School's later start time. In addition to the health and other reasons that have been stated supporting the later start time, there are secondary benefits for Greenwich residents. My daughter Mary Claire is a freshman at Sacred Heart Greenwich. Sacred Heart ends at 3:30 in the afternoon. She began rowing with Greenwich crew during 8th grade. Although Sacred Heart has a high school crew team, Mary Claire wanted to continue her training with Greenwich crew. She was able to do so because the high school start time moved the crew practice to 4, allowing her to attend. In addition to the personal benefit to us, the leader practice allows for public school and private school students to interact in a healthy and positive environment. So that's one of those secondary effects that you might not realize, but there are other organizations in town that are benefiting from actually changing the start time, and she wanted to share that. I'm sorry she couldn't be here. I'll leave this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so the next speaker is Pierce Smith, followed by Katie Yu.
Good evening. My name is Richard Pierce Smith, and I'm in 4th grade at Riverside School. I hope the start times for middle school and high school don't get reversed because it's sometimes hard for me to get up and go to Riverside at 8:30 a.m. On mornings when we meet at 8 a.m. for chorus, it can be hard. I play baseball. Last night my practice was from 6:30 to 8 p.m. When it rains, practice is moved to Pro Swing in Portchester. After the carpool home, it can easily be 8:45 p.m. I still need to shower, but often I'm not in bed until 9:15. It takes a while to unwind and actually fall asleep. It's a misconception that all younger kids spring out of bed at 6 a.m. I've never been like that. My siblings aren't like that either. I also have homework for 3 out classes, play an instrument, and have to read 20 minutes every night. It all takes time. I can't imagine how tired I would be if I had 3 times the homework and even longer sports practices with an earlier school start time. Lastly, I'm not sure people are aware, but many of my friends in 4th grade periodically are allowed to sleep in and go to school late because they are so tired. Please take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. And before you run out, let me just share a little secret. Sometimes it's hard to unwind and go to sleep after these meetings. So we appreciate you coming out and speaking. Thank you. All right, Katie Yu, followed by Susan Fahey.
Okay. Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Gilday and Chairman Bernstein. I'm going to apologize in advance because I really haven't had a chance to read the report as deeply as I'd like. So I'll apologize if my comments are a bit off the cuff. I just wanted to share a little bit of feedback that I've received from parents at Western and also in the special ed community. First, with regard to the report, it seems that many of the results are inconclusive with the exception of a few findings such as the big difference in ratings between students in AP and non-honors AP classes. However, I think it's important to note that they were also the biggest group to participate. Is it possible that there would have been different results if more non-AP honors students had actually participated? I do agree with the suggestion to do another survey in May, which may strengthen the validity of some of these results. Secondly, I do believe that parents of middle school students would have liked to have seen more data and questions in the survey. A lot of the questions seem to focus on high school related issues such as congestion in Hillside, campus, and club activity. I continue to agree with Chairman Bernstein's comment several months ago that the middle school ideal start time as recommended by the CDC has not been fully fleshed out, and it was a little disappointing to see that the survey did not try to assess how families of middle schoolers view the small time change and if they had any other preferences. With regard to special ed, it really doesn't seem that there's a lot of meat in the report. I think that parents really would have liked to have seen a little bit more in terms of socio-emotional metrics. Besides a few references to anxiety and depression, it's hard to see what else was measured. For example, how are we looking at objectives met in IEPs, PBIS benchmarks? Things like that would really point to whether this is successful or not. Really didn't see that. I'd also like to say that, frankly, it was a little disappointing to see the categories figure ES2 on page 78, which lumps students into groups, ELL, special ed, or honors AP. I don't know what the implication is there, but I really have to say that it's disappointing to see that we're still operating on these unenlightened stereotypes.
30 seconds.
Okay. Words that come to mind when reading this are bottlenecks, congestion, compression, not enough space, and daylight hours. And I drive my daughter to Chelsea Piers 4 days a week, sometimes on the weekends. On Saturdays, I sit in traffic on I-95. People aren't going to work that day and school's not in session, but there's still traffic. I think it's important to note that this is also an infrastructure problem. This is an issue with the town that we live in, and I think it's important to understand that this is contributing to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Susan Fahey, followed by Stacy Lovelace.
By the way, where's Barbara with the timer?
Do you not like my phone? You don't get
I actually like it. She cheated us 20 seconds last time, added up. No, I'm kidding. We're all good. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and good evening. I'm Susan Fahey, and I just want to speak a little bit about later school start time. Well, the vision of the graduate has been long since our gold standard as a measure toward graduating students in Greenwich. Today, it seems that some of our Board of Ed is heading toward the focus of our graduate as being a well-slept child versus a well-rounded child. While I definitely agree with the science that children who sleep less than 8 hours are more likely to be obese, depressed, and less productive, there are scientists out there who have published contrary data on the serotonin and when it's released from the brain in teenagers and when they fall asleep. It is important to remember that anyone can collect and spin data to support their side of an argument. An example is a published study I once read in the Annals of Epilepsy in 1995 suggested a neurosurgeon in California was reporting a 95% success rate in brain surgery for seizures. What he didn't say was that although he followed the patients for several years, he published a study at the height of when his patients had positive results. So at 6 months, his numbers were truly at 95%, but sadly within 1 to 2 years, 50% of his patients were back to having seizures. Data that may have led to me making a different decision on the brain surgery of our oldest child than only 6 months old. So a note for the Board of Ed, not all data is what it seems, nor is it always a sufficient metric. In another scenario, the American Academy of Pediatrics and the CDC also agree that breastfeeding your child for the first 6 months of life is critical and one of the single best practices one can follow to support a child's health. It reduces asthma, obesity, type 2 diabetes, ear and respiratory infections, and lowers rates of SIDS. Yet at the age of 6 months, only 1 in 4 children in America are being breastfed. Why, you ask, when there's tons of scientific data behind this and clear, undisputable benefits to newborns, do mothers follow this? Do they not want what's best for their children? Do they not care about children's health? No, of course not. It's because science and implementation are not one and the same. Many mothers are too tired to breastfeed, or they must go back to work to support their families, or they simply have to care for other children. So again, implementation and science are not the same. So the Board of Ed and our LSST friends, would you say that 3 months of breastfeeding would be okay in your household, or would you berate yourself, the spouse, and other fellow citizens if they're even 1 day short of 6 months? And then you would say it has no benefit whatsoever. I rise to be reasonable, to ask everyone to find the middle. It seems that pushing the clock back to 8:30 is too far for our town at this time, and it's not serving the greater good of all of our students.
30 seconds.
We have created tons of other problems on the front and back end, but more importantly, our high schoolers are complaining that they are stressed out about the compression of timing. Weren't we trying to help them not create more mental illness? So I kindly ask the Board of Ed to please be the bigger person, one that doesn't listen to just the squeaky wheel of people talking about science, and I ask you to think about the science versus implementation. I ask you to be reasonable, to find the middle, to give them more time to sleep in the AM and more time in the PM to do homework or have family dinner or volunteer, all which science says is also mentally helpful for our children. Let's help everyone in our schools be a well-rounded success. That is the true vision of the graduate.
Thank you. All right, next up, Stacy Lovelace, followed by Dan Abbasi.
Dear Chairman Bernstein, members of the board, and Dr. Gilday, I come to you this evening as a parent with my PTA hat removed. I don't speak often in this setting, but feel the time is now to ask you to please listen, not necessarily to the loudest voices, but to all the stakeholders. We need to come together and find a suitable middle. The leap forward was made this year, and you have and will continue to hear most students are happy to sleep later. My concern is the increased levels of stress as reported in these survey results and brought to my attention by friends, students, teachers, and colleagues. The stress doesn't seem to be tied to the later start time, but to the compression at the end of the day due to the later dismissal. It is clear other adjustments are necessary for their mental and physical health and well-being of our students. For this reason, please consider the addition of a school nurse or health professional to the continued good works of the steering committee. I am concerned that many high school students are opting out of electives or foreign language in favor of opens so that they can finish their homework before dashing off to dance or work or volunteering or team activities. They are missing out on those creative outlets to explore the curiosities and stress-relieving courses like clay and guitar and photography and comic improv and all the incredible course options that I clearly wish I were taking right now. Should the steering committee recommend and you decide to adjust the school start time or dismissal by 30 minutes or whatever you see fit, this is not taking a step backwards. It's setting a fine example for our community that you are reflective, listening, hearing, coming together, finding an agreeable middle so that students, teachers, and families can enjoy the full healthy benefits of later school start time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is Dan Abbasi, followed by you, Julie Ybarra.
Hello, board and Dr. Gilday. Really enjoyed those teacher awards today. Very moving, and thank you, Carol, for your speech about the teachers. My wife is one, and she nominated one of the winners today, and I can say the system worked. In Ellie Richmond's case, it's a good friend. I want to start by saying that I, like many others, am eager to be creative and collaborative and constructive in addressing all implementation concerns around start time, and to begin seriously exploring and adopting some of the best practices used by other districts who've successfully made and maintained this change. I do believe we're squandering some of the time for that creativity to bloom right now, given the way that we're going about the impact analysis in the steering committee. My main concern, and I've expressed this, is that if the committee's mandate does include making recommendations to reconsider or make adjustments to the start time, then we have some egregious omissions in that committee composition, such as the lack of a mental health professional, a guidance counselor, a local physician, even a local sleep expert. In other words, those whose principal expertise is the determinants and measurement of student well-being. Without that representation, I don't believe the committee can reach a legitimate consensus on any adjustments to the core issue of start time itself, but rather only address the implementation issues. I've made this request for supplementary appointments, and as has at least one member of the committee, and so far no changes. The basic response I get is that the sleep science was well understood in the earlier years of debate leading to the change, and we don't need to rehash it. Again, that's fine if we will now maintain a principled stance that 8:30 is the earliest acceptable start time and focus our impact analysis and response on the other moving parts. If we are considering going backwards to reevaluate the start time itself and making potential trade-offs between the drop in breakfast revenues and sleep-related benefits, then we need to have both represented to reach a legitimate consensus. And I'll just take one example I heard at the first committee meeting, which I attended and observed, and that is by moving the start time to 8:30, the traffic engineer noted that there's some, the peak drive time now coincides with the commute times generally prevailing in the area. And what we would expect to happen over time is that a new equilibrium would emerge. Some commuters will find ways to leave earlier or to leave or later to avoid peak congestion. over time. Why should we ask the students whose
30 seconds.
circadian rhythms are documented to have shifted later to be the ones to bear the burden of commuting earlier by shifting the start time back again? Why not have the other non-GHS commuters in the area make those adjustments, especially the adult commuters whose rhythms are naturally earlier? I'll mention on the surveys, I have a PhD in social sciences. I ran a poll when I was associate dean at Yale. And in a politicized environment like this, where you have a survey instrument, it's very easy to game it. All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Next speaker, Julie Ybarra, followed by Tim Hannah.
Hi, my name is Julie Ybarra, and I started living in Greenwich since the 1980s. I honestly did not expect to be speaking tonight because I have to go pick up my child coming from Trumbull, and she's actually still in Trumbull. The game was supposed to have ended at 7 o'clock. I expected her to be here at the high school at 8, and she's still in Trumbull, according to Find My phone. So it's a very colloquial I guess, statement that I'm about to give. I see a great benefit to having the school work with a child's circadian rhythms. They don't go to bed any earlier because they have to wake up earlier. They don't go to bed any later because they get to wake up later. They just don't, unfortunately for me. But what I have noticed is she wakes up now without bags and dark circles under their eyes. She wakes up healthier, she wakes up happier, sort of, for a teenager. And so having a later start time, I believe in compromise, but is a very good thing. I guess the question is, the late is the end time. And we have been figuring out solutions to this. You know, I know that I have a student athlete, and even as a recovering, Tiger mom, I do believe that it's better for her to start later and miss a few hours, few minutes of classes at the end than it is to start earlier. And we've been adjusting. They get out 10 minutes earlier so that the buses get out. And I've noticed that now they've actually added like 2 solid rows to get out of the high school. We are Greenwich, Connecticut. We can figure out how to put lights on our fields and solve traffic problems. Now, the problem of job opportunities and sibling care, that might be something different, more difficult. I haven't really thought it through. I apologize for being insensitive about that. But
30 seconds.
Oh, good. So thank you for listening to one opinion about the later start times, which I think is a very good idea.
All right, next speaker is Tim Hannah, followed by Alison Carroll.
Hello, my name is Tim Hannah. I'm a parent of 3 boys, grades 4, 7, and 10. This is my 11th year here with the Greenwich Public Schools. Thank you to the board and staff for all your efforts. Like you, I care about our schools, and so my comments tonight are in the spirit of continuous improvement. I'm going to change the subject away from the school start time. I know you have all those things you need to tackle, but I'd like to remind us all that we really need to focus on academics. It's the 3 R's. It's the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic. I applaud the district for looking at new ideas in the education environment and new ways of teaching and new ways of doing things. But over the last 10 years, I think the elementary and the middle schools have lost some of the focus on academics. The pendulum has swung too far on personalized learning, and it's swung too far on digital devices. So here are my comments on further comments on some topics that are interrelated. Personalized learning. It sounds great, but practically I have reservations about what the district is implementing. First of all, You've assumed that all students learn better with a device. You've given them a device and say you have to learn with this device. It's not personalized learning if you're forcing them to use a device and use a screen. Choices. I hear this all the time. Give the students, the elementary students primarily, more choices. They don't need more choices. My 4th grader should not have the choice to sit on a lawn chair and take a test. He should sit at a table on a normal chair. My child should not choose when he's ready to take the test. He's never going to be ready. He's always going to kick the can down the road. You know, this is not preparing these students for high school. The high school does things what I call the old-fashioned way. They assign a test, they have a syllabus, the students take the test. He shouldn't have a choice whether or not he does the homework. And then related to personalized learning, I know you talk a lot about mastery. That's a tough term. You know, listen, I'm still mastering things. I'm still learning a little math, a little physics, a little chemistry, writing. And if the district is going to say students only move on if they master something, then we should expect that more students will not advance to the next grade every year. And so I'd like you to think about
30 seconds.
Take that into consideration. Once again, back to the devices. I argue the students learn and comprehend better with pencil and paper. I see lots of pencil and paper everywhere tonight. There's been studies that show that writing helps with retention and comprehension. My high school student and now my middle school student, when they prepare for a test, they make what I call a cheat sheet and then they throw it out. But they learn when they write it down and they remember. I would love to continue this discussion anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker is Alison Carroll. That's our last speaker that signed up. If there are people who would like to speak, I would ask that they stand and line up over there by the side so that they're prepared. Thank you. And the same 3 minutes apply to you guys.
Hi, my name is Alison Carroll, and as many of you know, I've been involved with the school start times for over 14 years. And believe me, we're just as sick of being here as you are of us being here. We don't want to keep being here. I think that many of us were surprised that we're still here. And so over those 14 years, myself, Amy, a lot of people just kept hearing the word be patient, be patient, be patient, be patient. Studies and forums and meetings and all the rest of that. And we were, and we were, and we were. And then finally everything happened and that was great. I guess I would try to put that back to you guys and say, I think we need a little more patience on the implementation side in the sense that to go ahead and start to consider rolling something back after 3, 4, 5 months just seems a little, I don't know, just doesn't make any sense to me. I think that if you guys said to all of us out here, we're keeping 8:30 and we're going to do everything in our power to figure out how to make things better, we would all just go away. You would never hear from most of us again, and we would applaud you if you made that statement. But that statement hasn't been made, so that's why everybody is here. To me, the question is really what message are we sending to the kids? And not the parents, not the teachers, not all of us, but what message, all this going on, are we sending to the kids out there? The students who spoke earlier tonight said, we like the 8:30 start times and we'd like your help in maybe changing the end times. And I think that the message is, one, if something's really hard, give up and don't try to find a solution. That's not the message we want to be sending our kids. If you just said it's going to be 8:30 and then let's think outside of the box of different solutions of how to get there, that would be great. The second thing is, we're teaching our kids it's okay to use bad data to make a conclusion. I have heard tonight, we've heard in messages, we've heard in the press, all of these conclusions being drawn by the survey which was comparing May and October, and it's being quoted everywhere. And I don't think we want to teach our kids that. My last thing is, if you do a poor job at something you never really wanted to do, we'll reward you by not making you do it. So when my kid does a bad job cleaning his room,
30 seconds.
And then suddenly mom picks up the toys for him, he doesn't have to do it again. So in this particular case, from the very beginning, believe me, I know this, from the beginning, many of the people involved of this implementation had preferred an 8 o'clock start or not having it changed. By rewarding the poor implementation and management of the process, that's really what we're doing, instead of saying, okay, go figure it out. So again, I think if we would just say 8:30, we would all go away and you'd all be much happier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'd miss you. All right, if you would mind stating your name before you start.
Sure.
You know who you are.
Good evening, my name is Hamish Young. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. I work for UNICEF. Our mission and mandate is devoted to child rights and child wellbeing. And while I'm not an adolescent psychologist or an education specialist, I am literally surrounded by them. And they all tell me that school should start at 9 o'clock. So that's the first point I really want to make. 8:30 is not a late start time. In terms of global averages, 8:30 is actually an early start time. I spent 6 years at high school in Australia and our start time was 9:15. So I was really surprised when I came to live here and found a 7:30 start time to start with. Personally, I have to be honest, I used to think that an early start for kids was a good thing, but I'm wrong. I can't tell you how much data and research I've seen that proves me wrong. There's a huge amount of research from paediatric and adolescent psychologists, and there's lots of research from education experts, and it all strongly supports later start times. Our own experience and our own family supports it. The later start times have made a huge difference for both our kids, a freshman and a sophomore. They get more sleep, they get better grades, and all round they're better off with the later start times. And that's a big relief for our family. I can't tell you how stressful getting kids onto buses at 7 o'clock in the morning is. It's a nightmare. I've got some notes here on the survey. I've seen it. A lot of people have critiqued it. For me, it was at best comparing apples and oranges, more like apples and onions. I also know we never received questionnaires at any point in time. But anyway, there are better people better qualified than me who have already deconstructed it, so I won't go into that. Finally, I've read and heard the counter-arguments about the start times to do with the schedules and the like, and for me they just don't stack up. Sports schedules are just not as important as children's health and well-being. And come on, we're a bunch of smart people here. Surely we can work out some scheduling times and things like that to make it work. So that's the reason I've come here to speak tonight, to plead, to maintain, to implore you to maintain the later starting time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Stephen Mellendorf, and I've come to talk about the start times as well. This is my first time speaking at a board meeting, so I'm a little nervous. Anyhow, I have a son who started 9th grade this year and a daughter who's in 6th grade, and they've had a great year at the Greenwich schools. They're both getting great grades, they're both honor roll, and we're thrilled with the early start times. The kids definitely get enough sleep and they're ready to learn, and we were actually quite apprehensive about our son going to high school, and then we heard about the start times changing and we were extremely happy. We actually sent him to private school during 6th through 8th grade, and the start time was a factor in that decision. It wasn't the primary factor, but it was definitely a factor it seemed very early to us. And so we really hope that the start times stay where they are, because it's been such a great experience for our students and my son and daughter. And I personally find the research very compelling, and I have a doctorate in mathematics, and I do a lot of analyzing of trading strategies, and so statistical significance is very important to me. And I find the research that was done to be very compelling, and I think echoing what the other speakers said, the survey that did that was only 2 months into the school with a very limited amount of data really doesn't stack up against the wealth of research that shows how important it is for kids to get a good night's sleep so that they can really learn to their full potential. And I know from my personal experience, I have a very difficult time thinking when I don't get enough sleep. So please hold the times where they are now, because I think it's really great. Thank you.
All right. If there are no other speakers, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you very much for your patience, especially Mr. Borsick in the front row. And we'll move on to our monthly reports. You don't get a report. Our monthly report starting with the superintendent.
Certainly such a privilege to introduce those distinguished
You're not going to stay? Really? We're going to talk.
about it. So it's a privilege to be here tonight to recognize the distinguished teachers, and we'll look forward to presentations in May with them. Just truly a remarkable group of educators and such wonderful representatives of Greenwich educators. So really pleased with that. It's been a busy April working with Cardinal Field Steering Committee. We've had really our first actual meeting today and reviewed the project plan and communications plan going along with that project. So we'll be hearing more, and we'll be looking for some public input in probably mid-May, so before we break for the school year. Going along with that, master facility plan will also have some public input period. The reason we're trying to put the public input in May or June before we leave for the summer is because it takes the summer to build those capital operational plans, and so we want to have the input and feedback before we go about doing that. So we know the priorities are health and ADA accessibility and safety. You know, we have that framework in mind, but we want to make sure we get that public input and talk through those things so that we have some work time. We'll also be looking at the big picture of the 15 years and then the single year for capital outlay. School start time. I couldn't not have a school start time thing to say. We work on that as well, and it's a frequent topic administratively and with a newly formed steering committee that's actually been looking at logistical impact and has been doing a really nice job. So, do want to make a quick statement about start time. First is that we are not disputing the science or the benefits of the later start. I myself have a 10th grader, and she would be here speaking too. She loves it, and she says, "Come on, Mom, be real. You'd never get me to school on time if it were any earlier." So we like our sleep too in our household. We are not entertaining any discussions about returning to the old start time, so nobody's looking at that. We have issues that are impacting student health and well-being that we do have to tackle, and some of those may be related to start and end, and there may be some other influences on that. But that's long-term study to be doing. The steering committee was established to review logistical data and impacts to explore options that will mitigate some of this compression at the end of the day that students are experiencing. But no solutions have been predetermined, which means we would love to have the option that this work group can have an open box to work in and not give them 10 constraints. Doesn't mean they're saying we want to go back to at all. It just means let's let the process work. So we're jumping as a community to predetermined solutions, and we really don't want to do that. We want to maximize and optimize the benefits for our youth. That's why we're looking at logistical impact. We want to take the community's experience into the equation, not to make the decision based on the adults, but at least to hear there are great ideas out there. We need to hear those, and that committee is doing that work. So that committee will be meeting again at the end of April. The first was a SWOT analysis, looking at the strengths, opportunities, some of the weaknesses we're experiencing, and some of the threats that we have with the policy shift so that we can mitigate those. So the idea is you surface them so that we understand what the challenges are, so that we can get at them. So at this next meeting on April 26th, the work team will be determining which sub-team they would like to work on for the meeting inside the workday solutions, outside the school day solutions, school workday, focusing on the kids' schedules mostly. The transportation logistics with the traffic and the safety related to that, and financial transparency of this particular shift, just so that people know. And not to criticize it, just to say, you know, here it is, because there are rumors out there. So I want to make sure the rumors are put to rest. So we are doing that analysis as part of an implementation review, which was actually directed by the board in June of 2016 and in June of 2017. It was very clear that this was to be reviewed, and it was to be reviewed this first year. So I'm trying to do that work to implement the board's policy successfully. So that is the work that we are doing. And we do not have a medical doctor on the team, not because it wouldn't be lovely to have that, but we are really looking at logistics, so I needed logistics people to be working with me. I have academic people that are working with me. No one's disputing the science. I said if I did have my druthers, I would have everybody just be in school, you know, probably 9 to 3:30, something like that, very traditional, old-fashioned sounding. But, you know, this idea that I do understand kids work well a little later in the morning, or some of them do anyway. So interestingly, people had asked, what did you do over spring break? And over April break, I had the opportunity to present for National School Board Association. And at that meeting, I learn a lot always, because it's, you know, we have many, many thousands of districts across the nation. So there are usually 7,000 to 10,000 board members there. So I get to hear a lot of perspectives and a lot of trends on what's happening across the nation. So my presentation was about what's new, what's next in 2035, learning looks like. And the interesting thing is, in that presentation, it's not really a lot about start and end time, because start and end time is a transactional shift in transformative times. And really, as you know, the world's changing, education's changing, and education is really a 24/7 opportunity now that we didn't have in the past when we didn't have our devices and didn't have as much access. Tonight at the Distinguished Teacher Dinner, we looked at the little placemats that second graders had made us. They highlighted a story of an animal, some research on an animal. There were animals I had never heard of. I had never heard of them because when I grew up, we just had a Rolodex, or, you know, the little card catalog, and a very limited amount of books. Our students can go on the internet and find out about animals from around the world that I didn't know about. So I learned about different kind of spotted salmon tonight, you know, all different kinds of things. So anyway, you know, our children are making remarkable gains, and academically they are growing. But in 2035, education and learning does look different, and you're going to see a lot more community-based education models. So that's why the voice of the community is so important in these decisions that we make. Then that conference was quickly followed by another called ASU GSV Summit. That's Arizona State University and Global Silicon Valley come together. It's the 9th year they've had a symposium. I was awarded an Educator Innovator Scholarship to attend that meeting and present to them the top 12 innovative practices at Greenwich Public Schools. Some of you parents have heard me. I did a couple of practice runs of that presentation at some of my PTA evening meetings, but that was well received by a national audience, actually international. So we are an innovative district, and we should celebrate that. And start time was one of the areas highlighted. So it's really amazing to me that I'm out talking about the great work that's happening, and then I come back to a slew of emails saying, why aren't you supporting us? And you're not doing what we think you should. So interesting dichotomy there, because here I'm out evangelizing and then coming back and realizing people don't realize that. So that's probably why I'm sharing with you that it is one of your innovative practices, but certainly you're not the first district to take on start time challenges, and you won't be the last. But anyway, it is a transactional issue. We are working through the logistics, and I appreciate everybody's patience in working through the logistics. But when you do hear rumors, I do hope you will reach out and ask for clarity. The top 12 innovative practices at Greenwich Public Schools has also been selected to be presented with the state superintendents across Connecticut at the end of May, and then again by the School Board Association in November. So at that meeting, I hope the board members will assist with that particular presentation as well. That is pretty fun. Also in April, each month, I speak with the radio host, Tony Savino. He's such a great interviewer. And this month, I had the chance to bring 2 students who won the service learning awards or recognitions. So Julia Merrill and Renee Johnson both attended and shared their ideas, and interestingly enough, Tony asked them about start time as well. So it's a topic that comes up a lot. They had 2 really different experiences with it. So even in, each group, you find different perspectives, and that's why I think it's so important that we continue to listen and improve so that we maximize and optimize the benefits of the students, which I realize I said before, but I said it a second time purposely. We've also been working, as you know, with DEEP across our remediation plans because we can't forget about our fields. So that's also a very frequent topic. And so we are meeting with them again April 24th, I believe it is. So we're working on having their input into the work plans so that we can ensure that we're hitting the standard of what the remediation will be for Western Middle School in particular, but we're also talking about the high school. As long as we have them in the same room in Hartford, we figured we might as well talk about both. So we've been doing that. I've been asked to present on a superintendent's webinar, so use some technology. I'm a wannabe, I'm not an expert, but I will be, ironically enough, doing a presentation on work-life balance. They like to pick the one that's the counter. So I'm sure I will be the humorous energy in that particular online panel as I struggle to use the technology. I'm sure it will be interesting. But yes, I do sometimes lack sleep. And in between, we work on the budget and we work on clarifying head count, which actually you've stayed stable over 10 years. A little bit ups and downs, but basically you're stable. But we're digging out lots of data to look at that. And we're definitely, I want to make sure you know that we're also working with the MISA facility and the building committee on some ongoing issues. We had a little bit of rain roof damage that impacted a, ceiling tile. So the water had trailed over. So we continue, and we are having some seeping up as well, similar to March 3rd. Not a lot, but just it's ongoing. So the building committee is kind of corralled back to try to help us with that. Again, operational logistical issue. So there are those things ongoing as well. I think those were the main things that I wish to share tonight. A little longer report than normal.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, so it's reports of... Sure.
I'm sorry, Jill. I saw your note about the tile falling. I didn't understand that to be in MISA. I thought that was in the Student Center. And you just referenced MISA, and then you talked about seepage through the floor. I guess can you clarify that? That part I didn't.
It's groundwater.
Groundwater coming up. Where is it coming up?
In the orchestra pit.
Oh, good.
So, and I think you are right. I think the water was,
the ceiling tile was in the student center,
but it didn't.
Wasn't in MISA.
Right.
No? So the roof at MISA is not leaking?
No.
That you know of?
No. Oh, Dan's there. Yes, Dan.
The roof in the lobby of MISA has a leak.
There you go. Oh. That's why I think I got it. Yeah, so anyway, the building committee has been called back together, and they are helping to work with the construction warranties, etc. on that. So we will keep you posted as we have more information, but they are doing a great job. Dan's doing an excellent job keeping up with a lot of facilities issues. Dan, the answer, yes.
Are we testing that water that's coming up?
It's clean.
What do we do with it when we test it? Do we take a sample and then we send it off to the lab?
Good news is it's clean water. It's not like it's sewage or anything.
Not a mic. I think there's a mic. There's no mic, so come on over to that podium.
Oh, you can look very official at the podium.
Right on the way to the door, I know.
I'll give you the hook.
So the issue with the MESA water infiltration, we're getting some water coming up in and around the orchestra pit. Presently, AECom is doing monitoring around the site for the soil remediation issues. We've approached them. They've given us their reports for the adjacent wells, and they've all come up clear. As of this morning, I just met with them this morning, they recommended that we do a wipe test of the wall that was wet, and we'll have that tested. Just a wipe test. There's not enough water for them to extract.
I don't even know what that is. I'm sorry.
So but their indication is that if it's groundwater from the area, it's fine. It's clear. But they're going to test it anyway.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, with that, we'll move to the
Never
reports.
dull.
Yeah, there's always something. We'll move on to reports of officers, committees, and liaisons. We'll start at this end. Any reports? No? Dr. Francis?
Quick one from the Alliance. I enjoyed very much an interaction that I had with the AVID students. We did a couple of career days. It was really fun and actually something we may want to think about for our other students. I think it was really great to have both a presentation and some small group interactions with the kids, just giving a sense of how people get to their careers and what paths they take and what wisdom they might want to impart on how you get there. Another great thing with the Alliance, tuning into music, had a wonderful interaction today with the Greenwich Orchestra, which I think is a great partnership with that. And the Alliance has also wanted to have me say, which I think is true, some of the great teachers that we have, two of them actually are related to projects that have been supported by the Alliance in terms of some of the innovative changes that we have in our schools, and I think that's a great partnership as well.
Thank you. Any reports down here? Ms. Dayton?
I am the liaison to Cooperative Education Services, which is our regional education service center serving Fairfield County. I recently served on a search committee. We just recruited an excellent new executive director. I am so pleased. His name is Chip Dumace, and the board approved that hire, so we are off and running. And I assure you, he brings a whole new energy and level of commitment to doing new things in interesting ways. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing to serve on that representative council.
Ms. Rabin?
We have a new mic. And I don't have to hold it down. The MESA thing, I'm on the building committee, and it's a certain sort of circumstance that causes the water. I think the past time it was snow against the building, so there's a certain weather circumstance that affects it. The budget committee, we have a meeting next Monday, and we have two items on our agenda. One is to determine our role as a steering committee in the master facility plan, as well as get an early glimpse on a budget type dashboard that we've been talking about, looking at things at a program level, costs and impacts and things like that.
Thank you. I do want to thank Ms. Rabin and Ms. Olson for serving on the Distinguished Teachers Committee. There are so many great nominations that happen. It's a lot of reading. I know it's hard to make decisions, so thank you for doing that. I know for Ms. Rabin, this is multiple years, and we're glad you still like doing it, because it's great to read about the teachers, so I love that. I'll give a quick report for New Lebanon. We actually have our second payment from the state in the bank, which is fantastic. There's a crane on site. If you drive by, you'll note it does not reach the existing building. It just covers the site of the new building. And steel is actually going up. So this is the exciting part when you see a building start to take shape. Interestingly enough, we're picking furniture. We've already kind of settled on a color scheme. I feel like I'm moving into a new house, so it's very exciting. All right, with that, we'll move on to our first discussion item of the evening, which is school start time. So Dr. Gilday.
Certainly. So tonight is the second of what will likely be 4 different reports taking the different aspects of impact analysis. And everybody has been aware of limitations of the survey. Nobody is challenging that, but we look at the data that we have and that we have aggregated to date. So that is what you're seeing. So this particular report is about the actual parent, staff, and student survey. It was a Hanover survey with some questions that we specifically asked about sports and clubs, which is where you got some of the extracurricular information on that. So that is the data that you have received. As I said, the steering committee is actually working with more of the logistical implications. What can we do inside the school day? What can we do outside the school day? What can we do with transportation and traffic and safety? And what can we do with financial transparency to ensure we have the correct charts or whatever it is BET and RTM would like to make sure that we are providing them the information to be knowledgeable. So anything, questions?
Dr. Francis.
This is not really particularly a start time issue, but one of the things we have talked about is, trying to create a framework for future things and how we look at data. I had in big letters here that I didn't want to forget. I found it troubling, the breakdown of looking at free and reduced ELL and SPED versus AP honors. To me, those are not two distinct groups. I think we hope that there's a lot of overlap between those two, and I find it troubling to set that up in that way. So I'm hoping we don't do that again.
I think even when you look at your state accountability report, you still have student groups and groupings and growth. I think they were looking for those specifics simply based on, are there indeed any differences? We even looked at attendance on bus routes, to see if that's any different. Like if a bus is typically running on time, is the attendance different than a bus route that may have been late or impacted by traffic? So we even have that kind of information.
But I would, if you want, and it may be that they didn't feel like they had enough data, and then I think we need to let it go. If you want to do it by socioeconomic status, that's one thing. But free and reduced does not mean AP honors, right? SPED doesn't mean not AP or honors, right? So to me, right? So.
Right. A student might be in multiple groups, exactly.
I think what it said was that it took the people who were the intersection of the two and excluded them. I could be wrong. I haven't reread it that carefully, but I found that part troubling. So I just think it's something we should look at again to see how we're looking at that issue.
We'll make a note of that. Ann's our liaison with Hanover, so we will make a note.
Other questions, comments on this? Mr. Sheriff.
Jill, I didn't know if you, before we dove into this, if you had more comments about this lengthy report that you guys sent us. I mean, it's 78 pages. So I know you didn't say much about it. Is there something you want us to call to our attention particularly?
No, it's, do you need the additional data that was sent today for your request on the backups, or do you just mean the actual survey itself?
I don't know about that data. When did that data come? By 2 o'clock, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you'll have it.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some additional disaggregation.
No, I'm talking about the actual report.
Just that this is the next phase. So you're getting the second phase.
Okay. And what are you looking, what do you want to get from us?
At this point, you're receiving information, and you will eventually receive your recommendation on what we think we can do to improve the logistics to optimize and maximize the benefits for our kids with this particular policy shift.
Mr. Sheriff, if I could, I'd like to ask, process-wise, I think you mentioned this is the second of probably 4. So can you lay out the next steps for us?
Certainly. So the work group will be working in April 26th, and they will be looking at the challenges that were presented, and we are looking at the things we are solving for. So we're obviously solving for some specific issues, right? Some of the traffic impact in the morning, some of the travel times in the afternoon, looking at what we can do within the school day, if there's anything we can do with our blocks, especially for high school kids. And those will be the recommendations that come in, those things that can help us to maximize and optimize the implementation. So we will be sharing the information then that the work group is solving for. And then eventually you'll have those recommendations, and that would be the time we would ask for your, react and support.
Mr. Chair, I don't know how you want to handle this. I thought there would be a little bit more presentation of what was here, and then it would automatically answer, but that's okay. I'm just giving fair warning. I've got some clarifications and questions. So do we just how do you want to take them?
If you could send those on, that would be awesome, and then we can get them back to you.
There's a couple I think I want to talk about in the group.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll note that you were sent, I believe, 5 or 6 files of disaggregated data today that may actually answer your questions. Yeah, I know you had separately requested that. That was provided to the entire board.
Great.
I don't know if you want to review that before you start poking at data.
No, it wasn't that. I was more interested in, I don't want to talk about that data. I don't need to talk about that data. My points relate to something else here. Jill, I'm reading from the section that is not the Hanover report. It's the summary that we got of, I guess, a meeting that you held with this committee. And thank you for this. It was really helpful. I wanted to just clarify if I'm reading this right. One thing it says in here is, I guess these guys from, I don't know who Joe Roberto and Nick Mariani, who they are. I presume they're from the traffic department of the town, I guess. But they said something in here that I didn't seem to match what I had understood otherwise. They say the AM peak hour, they're talking about traffic in the town, so around the high school, not generated by the high school. The AM peak is 7:45 to 8:45. And then they say the highest queue length, and I presume they're talking about our queue. I don't know whose queue they're talking about, is from 8 to 8:20. And it says afternoon GHS peak is not the same as commuter peak, PM commuter peak. So in the afternoon, there's no overlap. So they're talking about the morning. But they're saying, if I read this right, the worst time where we're overlapped is between 8 to 8:20 right now. Is that what they're saying?
Correct.
But they say the peak hour, so before we made this change, there was traffic getting to the high school before 7:30. So from 7 to 7:30 was when
Right, so
traffic
you were not
would...
overlapping,
Right.
correct.
But anything we do, if I read this right, and I don't know how long this queue is, the queue appears to be 20 minutes. So if you wanted to solve traffic, quote, unquote, make it like it was before, you'd have to be before 7:45.
Or, there you go.
Or after 8:45.
Right. But wouldn't that have been really helpful data to have before we made the policy shift or decision? I think it would have been great, but we didn't have it, but now we do. So I'm glad we have that. So what we were adding at the high school is 450 cars and 35 buses. So that's the number that we're adding to that particular load. So it's just important to know that, right? Now, it just might
Well, it's
be-
hugely important to know because it tells you there is no magic solution.
Correct.
If you back this thing up till whatever, there is no magic solution.
This is why I needed the logistics
Yeah,
people
no,
to be on this
that's good.
team instead of the medical people at this point.
I wanted to understand that because
You
that,
understand it exactly right, and it was kind of helpful, when he shared that information and said, we really wish somebody would have asked in the past year because we would have told you.
the other thing that jumped out of this data from people, I don't even know who they are, they're new people to the process, which is good, I suppose, is when I read the report, I took away there were many positives. There were qualitative statements that were positive and there were validated data. Great, wonderful, we know that, right? if you're going to run a process, and I just want to understand, because I'm going to have to think about, I'm looking for, to your point, if recommendations are going to come, I'm really interested in recommendations that solve, quote, solve our problems, right? And I took away, and I read everybody's statements, and then I distilled it down. It seemed to me, I listed 4 problems, big problem sets. And that's why I'm interested in the others. You know, one is missed instructional time for student athletes. So there's this missed instructional time, but I think it's clearly defined to students being pulled out for athletics. I didn't read in here, there are other students that we didn't know about that are impacted by being pulled from class. Did I miss that though? Are there other things that we don't know about? Well, but are those people being pulled, or were they always being pulled? Are they being pulled more now than they were before?
Right.
No, but
some of this question that you're asking is, yes, in every academic program, probably since, you know, who knows, from whatever time people started traveling in schools, you do have kids miss some instructional time for activities. The band trip, you know, people have been doing the DC trip, some districts go on school days, some districts don't. So certainly you always have some that are missing academics for something. That does happen.
Sure.
The challenge, and again, you could argue, you know, an athletic season is 8 to 10 weeks. So, well, they're only missing the class for 8
I don't want to get into that. I'm just trying to say what part of the problem is the problem we have to solve for? Is it athletes, or is it athletes and other people, and who are those other groups we have to solve for?
Right, we are focused on solving for athletes because the biggest change that you have this year is you did not have freshmen and JV having to leave school early in the past, and you do now. So that's a shift and a change that has to be solved for.
The other one I had was, and that's them traveling to contests. That's what that is, right? The loss of instructional time is related to traveling to contests.
And sometimes there are multiple in a week.
Yeah, well, that's another thing I wanted to come back to. The other problem that has to be solved was, we've talked about ad nauseum, is practices, right? The other third one that I took away was traffic. I think traffic is a morning problem. I'm sure the neighbors would say something else.
We have a lot more flexibility in the afternoon, you're right.
The other one that jumped out that seemed to need to be addressed was alignment of the middle school and GHS. If I read what all these stakeholders brought up as issues, right? The police and a couple other people and parents said, by virtue of you stacking up a middle school on top of, you've created some problems, right? There was one other that jumped out, but the data doesn't support it, so I'm lost on that one, which is impact to extracurriculars. But my point is that if I heard you right, so are these the 4 big problems that this committee is trying to solve? Is there another big problem that you guys are trying to solve that you think has to get addressed?
I think you hit the major logistical impact issues that we were talking about.
So if we solve for these 4, we dramatically improve the lives of people, particularly kids.
Right, we're looking at students, we're looking at district operations and the community impact, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, let's take a break and see if anybody else has any questions or comments.
Anybody else who wants to talk, go ahead, jump in.
We're going to go back to our continued practice. Ms. Dayton.
Page 11 of the report talks about the student's perception of the change, which I feel is the #1 most important to focus on. And I'm concerned about whether or not the task force is looking at the stress level data that we see here.
For which report?
Page 11
of the beginning.
In front of you,
Oh, you're in the Hanover report. Okay, yep. Okay, thank you.
When 40% of the students in the sample, and again, I recognize it's a sample, 40% reported negative impact on their stress level. We all agreed that we were going to look at this through the lens of health and well-being, because when this board made the decision, the criteria was health-related. So I think for consistency and credibility, the board has to stick with that lens. Is the committee looking at the increased stress in any way? Is there a separate subcommittee that's outside of the logistics?
The high school has a wonderful, I don't know what name it is. I call it stress committee, but I don't think it's called stress committee. Chris, what is your committee called? Where the kids, was it called stress?
Well, we had a stress committee, but it's not currently on.
Okay.
We are looking at the issue of stress.
So you heard from our student body president tonight, and as he talked about the breakouts that they're doing, we also have the sophomore class president has done several mini surveys of the student body this year, and he has been providing, actually Lauren and I have been there, so he has been providing us with insights and some of that data that they pull together, so that's been really helpful. And as you know, stress is related to a number of things and definitely mirrors what we're seeing across the state. Definitely mirrors what they talk about at Yale, the ruler, self-regulation and all the social emotional well-being. But I do think, whenever you're doing any change, you're going to have an implementation dip. So some of this is a change that just kids weren't used to. For some, it is putting a little bit of pressure on that babysitting at the end of the day, so they're feeling some urgency to get home because they're trying to get out at the same time as their sibling, which hasn't been the past. Some of them have lost some work shifts because although they could still get there fairly quickly, the manager would prefer to put somebody in that can do, start at 3. So there are definitely some of those anecdotes as well. So again, you hear all pieces and you're trying to solve for and make the best recommendations we can inside the school day, outside the school day, financial transparency, and the just this whole traffic safety, because part of it is, to some people's points, maybe we can, Mr. Schur, maybe we can train traffic, right? Maybe we can do some traffic. Maybe the buses don't have to change. Maybe the people do, neighbors do or something. I don't know. I don't want to make neighbors mad, but right. But
I don't think my employer would really love that.
But you know what I'm saying? Like there are other certainly things to continue talking about, which is why we have a logistical group doing that, because I think those people have been doing this enough in town that they have a sense of the patterns and how we might impact that. But I do think the stress and student health and well-being is a huge part of our vision of the graduate. We do have to look at it. That's a longer, it's a longer term project. Certainly, but it's a lot, right? It's related to homework, it's related to tests, it's related to pressure on grades, it's related to how many activities we're doing. It's a high drive community, which is a blessing and a curse, right? So you've got these really good parts of that, and you've got some challenges with that we do have to talk about as a community, because schools are a reflection of the communities they serve. So I would guess that there's stress in the parent population as well, and the educator population, and the superintendent who doesn't get enough sleep.
And plus the board members too.
Right.
All right, other questions? Ms. Stowe.
Just a quick question, just to make sure I'm reading this right, Jill. On page 11, I want to say this is the first report. It's this section 2 impacts on student academic outcomes, this bit. Yeah, just to make sure I'm understanding this. So the parents who took this survey say ability to stay alert and focus during class, positive effect, basically, take positive plus a very positive, 49%, right? Mm-hmm. But then the teachers, we broke it down to say ability to stay alert and focus during class in the morning, and they saw mostly no change, right? But 25%. Whereas, because we're hearing that, but the afternoon is better, but this sort of says to the contrary. Yeah? Am I right about that?
Right. So, and to some of our speakers' points tonight, we can look at actual academic data and stats, because we can pull that out of our system, but this was a perceptual survey. So that was the part that was important to understand, is just it's a parent's perception. Is your child more stressed, less stressed, paying attention? But then what is the teacher's perception of that? The other thing that is interesting is at the beginning of the year, I know Dr. Winters talked to us about, wow, the kids are really awake in the morning, and this is awesome. And I think the kids have adapted. So now I think 8:30 kind of looks like 7:30 did last year, which is kind of interesting. But again, it's just my perception from walking around a couple times, you know, so I wouldn't make that data point the data point. It's just fascinating, I think, though, that people do adapt to conditions.
Mr. Scher. Jill, by the way, just for those of you when you look at the data set, I asked for disaggregated because you'll notice as an example, parents, if you read the footnotes, it's middle school and it's high school. So if you're trying to draw a conclusion about what's a middle school parent drawing a conclusion about their kid, and what happened with the change at the middle school and what have you, that's why I think it's really important we disaggregate this data if we're trying to zero in on challenges. Jill, I was really, I come from a research background, so I was really I was glad you guys sent this to WeStat. It was a little weird, you know, having a credible organization look at another credible organization, but because Hanover's a really credible organization. But what alarmed me was I don't know if everybody who doesn't live in data has recognized these recommendations from WeStat, what they actually mean. They're on the bottom of page 11 on the front of this report. And it's technical jargon, but they are definitely pushing the alarm button. Confirm validity and reliability of survey instruments. Use pre-designed surveys to define terms like well-being, stress, sleep, quantity, and quality. They also recommend kind of implement the same or different survey in May. That's technical jargon for, by the way, you should run the survey you ran already to do a proper comparison, but in addition, you should run another one because they're really nicely connecting that to item number 1, which is the validity and reliability of the survey instruments. I'm really worried about that. And the reason I'm worried about that is wherever you are on this, it tells me if there was something jumping out that said this was really great, you should be cautious about that. If there's something here that says it's bad, you should be very cautious about that. I would love to hear from, and I think I asked for this the last time, to hear from the WeStat people, because I think it's great that you've hired these people, but I'm really concerned when they're calling out this many caveats to be careful about the survey and the analysis of the data. So I don't know, what is our plan as a result of their very carefully worded, but I'm sure Phil probably freaked when he saw this.
You know, we're not freaking because I think we're educators and we're used to lots of data points and understanding that there are limitations to data. We deal with that all the time with kids, right?
Yeah,
There's
well,
limitations to data.
Lives, right?
Any survey company, as you said, one credible organization is looking over at another credible organization. We did not have WestDat interview Hanover.
No, they just analyzed. Can we let her respond before you interject? Thank you.
We're conversing. If we would have used WestDat's instrument, if they had one, of course they would have less concern. But we're using someone else's instrument, so they called it out. That not surprising to me. It wasn't actually a surprising finding, at all. No. We already knew there are limitations to survey. There's limitations to time of year. We did grapple with, do you do October to October? Do you do October, May? Do you do May to May? We do that even with assessment data when we're looking at beginning, middle, end of the year, and is middle year to end of year growth the same as end to end? You know what I mean? So we're kind of used to, I guess, this kind of thing. So, alarming, no, because it's all a part of a bigger picture. But yes, don't put all your eggs in one data item, right? So keep looking, keep learning, keep taking this impact. That's why I know a lot of people said, "Oh, please just give us an answer, reassure us of this in writing." We will, we will. But right now, I think it's okay to say we are implementing, we are learning different things. I think you're going to have an awesome white paper at the end of this to share with start time advocates across the nation to say these are really strong steps to implementation. These are really 7 great things to do. These are the things that maybe you want to look at. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I think it's okay. I think it's I'm unhappy that people feel so unhappy. I'm sorry about that. I don't like that people are, you know, I would like to calm people down and say, please don't worry, it's just implementation. I mean, we're doing, you have a plan, you got to work a plan, you got to evaluate. But there are some limitations to perceptual data. You have to ask a parent if their kid's alert in class, that's based on a dinner time conversation, they're not seeing it, right? So I think you all knew, you know, when you make a shift, you're going to have bumps and we're going to have things that work really well. But I think we do have to solve for those things, to your point, and to not would not be helpful for next year. So I do think it's important that we do that. And as all of you know, we didn't spend a lot of time on lights, right? Didn't talk a lot about lights tonight, because again, it's not really about lights or not lights. This is just about, you know, all these other logistical things. So I have no doubt it's going to be just fine. I have no doubt we're going to come up with great recommendations. We have an incredible town. We have great people working, lots of people willing to share their time and talent and commitment and information. But, you know, we may not have a perfect data set. We may not have a perfect survey, and that may be okay. It'll be okay. So, but I do think it means, you know, we may have to talk about, you know, the timing of another survey, or to say, kids, we're sorry to bother you with this again. And we saw the 2, you know, SRO skits that said, you didn't listen to us, but we actually are. It just takes longer to make a shift or to get back to you on that information that you're sharing. But I do think we do need to capture anecdotes, qualitative and some of this quantitative, but note, it's not perfect. We got it.
All right, other questions or comments?
You know, I do have Jen Lau here though, and I do have Ann here. I feel like I should ask them if is there anything else you want to add, because Jen also, she highlighted, you know, any of the challenges we were having too before we even got the data back. Did I cover it? All right, Ann, you feel it's covered? All right, great. Thank you.
To share.
Jill, there are 3 things that I educated myself about that when you come back with any recommendations, I would hope in that recommendation set they would be considered. And shame on me, I just didn't know this data. One is I looked at our homework policy. Our homework policy, okay? I should have known, but I was not aware that, as an example, how much homework we're expecting at the high school level. Because, you know, the parents were talking about kids getting killed by homework. If you're a top student, you take all APs, right? The expectation is you're going to do as much homework out of class as you are in class time. That's 5 hours a night of homework. I then went and looked at it, even if you're all in non-honors, our expectation is you're going to do 3 hours of homework every single night. Even if we did this AP cap thing, right? It's almost 4 hours of homework a night. I think we really have to, you know, Ms. Dayton said something I think very important 2 meetings ago. She said, we have to be thinking out of the box. We have to take this as an opportunity. You've used the word reimagine. I would really want to have a conversation about the level of homework, because I know, and I think most people who have a high school kid here will tell you, even that policy, I don't think all teachers are consistently sending home homework that is within policy. So there's an implementation challenge. The other one that caught my attention is I actually dug through the work to try to see what was happening of this idea of kids being pulled out for contests. I looked at the football schedule, the girls' field hockey schedule, and the girls' soccer schedule. Not what I expected. I was surprised. Away contests for boys football's 4 in a season. This past season there were 4 that were away that were during the week. Okay.
But remember, they also had practice that they traveled for.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, in terms of away contests, what really shocked me, which I should have known, was field hockey. We're asking those students to do 2 contests a week every week for 8 weeks. I had no idea that that was the level of commitment that we were expecting of that student. As I say, I learned a lot of things that weren't on my radar through this.
It's impressive seeing a board member who's been on the board how long? And look at
Yeah,
what
I
you're
was on
learning.
SST too, and this didn't come up in SST.
And look at what you're learning.
Another one that surprised me was in the schedule, even though in SST it was approved so that we wouldn't take the JV teams, right on our published schedule, it says pulling teams out to send with the varsity team. So
Which the board authorized. You said it was okay to do that.
No, we went the other way. We said, we're actually going to give you the money so that you don't do that. But
Mr. Chair,
my point, hold on one second. My point is, Jill, is when you come back with any recommendations, I hope that we will be open-minded enough to not, to your point, not hold any of these things as constraints and come back with any out-of-the-box thinking of things that we could do, even things maybe we thought we were going to do that didn't get done for XYZ reason. So whenever you're coming back with recommendations, and I'm not clear if it's the 1st or the 17th, but the feedback I would give, personally, I would be looking to hear the thinking of the committee and know they ran that to ground completely in any recommendation that we could support.
Thank you. That's why we've got high school and Gus and that team working on that as well. So yes, we're aware. We were aware of the practices and the games and the length of practices and the length of travel. It's one of the things we're solving for.
All right, any other questions or comments? So this will come back. All right, thank you. So now we're on to our action items. The first action item is the new policies. So this is the first part of the 6,000 series of the K policies. Ms. O'Neill couldn't be here tonight. I'd like to handle this the same way we handled the last set of K policies. We've already had a first reading on this. What we would do is take them as a whole. If there are policies that people have questions or comments about or think need further thought, what we would do is refer those back to PGC and not take them up and try to wordsmith them here tonight. So I think the best way to proceed is to take a motion to accept the policy recommendations out of PGC, and then we can amend that to exclude any that have anybody has questions or comments about. Is everybody agreeable with that approach? Yep. So Dr. Francis.
I make a motion to approve the new policy 6,000 to 6142.
Is there a second? Ms. Stowe. All right. Any comments, questions about those policies? And I know we've had some time with these. I think they were brought up in March at the work sessions. Mr. Sherrick.
I missed the last meeting, so I didn't have a chance to comment, but I had some areas of concern, but I don't want to stop progress. So rather than raise all those, because I think you're looking for a vote tonight, I'm just going to wind up voting no. But it's not that I don't necessarily support this. It's just I have a whole bunch of areas of probably four or five where I've got some questions or concerns, but I don't really want to stop progress.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The last meeting, though, was about the master plan. We didn't take these up.
Sorry.
This was at the public meeting where you were actually present.
Yeah, I think actually I had to leave, right? That was the one
I think we covered this, but these have been sent to you. Look, what I would say is we can vote on these tonight. We've got a motion on the table. What I would recommend is if you have concerns about specific ones, certainly send those on to PGC. This is not a forever. We obviously know we're putting these in big blocks. We are going to have to go and revise some of them down the road, I'm sure. So I would say note your comments to PGC. If you want to share them with the full board, I think that's great as well. Other questions or comments on these? All right, with that, I'll call the question to accept the 6,000 to 6142 policies. All those in favor? 6. All those opposed? 1. It passes. Thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is the acceptance of gift or donation for GHS stadium equipment. This is the sound equipment. I guess I will turn to the superintendent.
I don't know if Dan's still here, David.
I think, yeah.
All right, so we are working to continue our partnerships with our athletic community, and we have a wonderful donation of a replacement sound PA system that is being recommended for installation, meeting all sound requirements, and can be moved in the event that a new press box or new bleachers were brought in.
Okay, so is there a motion on the table? Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we have a motion and then put it on the table? Somebody would like to make a motion to accept this? Ms. Dayton, do we have a second? Dr. Francis? Mr. Scher?
Jill, I got a little confused. By the way, fully support this thing. I think we should be doing this every day of the week. Anybody wants to give us money for something that we need and want, we should just do that over and over and over again. My question was, though, I got a little murky here in the process because one of the things we've established consistently is that we will take gifts of real property, we will take gifts of money. We strongly prefer to take gifts of money that cover costs that are fully managed by our people. That wasn't clear to me what was actually happening. It also says in there's this weird reference to if we need more money for implementation, these people will cough it up. So I didn't understand what I was reading. Can you just clarify how we're going to take this gift?
Right. So this was an RFP that did go out for this particular product, if you want to call it that, equipment installation, and then it was the sound testing. That's where that references to that extra or additional, if additional funding is needed, because we want to make sure we meet all the decibel levels and everything. It's a residential area. All of that's been scoped though and been drafted, so I feel pretty comfortable with that. I think we have another page that didn't make it into print, but it is basically just the, is it from the high school that just says we're requesting this gift be accepted? Oh, it sort of is. It's a memo.
No, I guess my simple question, Jill, is if you look at the back page on the bottom,
right,
it says installation cost of, I don't know what, $6,000, $7,000. I don't have it in front of me.
Yes.
But then it says in the other part that there may be extra installation costs, and GYFL says they will cover it. I just didn't know what that GYL. I'm sorry, GAF will. I'm all caught up. GAF will cover it. I just didn't know what that meant.
I think it just meant that.
It does mean that.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, great.
Yeah, I know
great.
I think they really wanted to make a nice comprehensive donation, which is much appreciated.
Yeah. Okay,
great. Dr. Francis.
So I appreciate the fact that there's effort going into making sure that we're meeting the legal requirements, but what I also wanted to know was, do we have a sense of how it's going to compare to our current system?
That's the goal.
Okay, yes, I'm hoping that part of it. What I meant is in terms of decibel levels. So I'm making this up. I have no idea what the numbers are, but let's say 60 decibels is the rule.
45.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm making up the numbers. And, our previous one only got to 30, and now this one's going to be 50, right? So I want to understand, are we anticipating that this is going to be more disruptive, even if it's legal, or do we think it's going to be in the same decibel range as prior?
Yeah, no, they actually, the way they will set it, it will actually be set so that it's not going to go above that, but we do still have the actual decibel meter that Gus does use before any game or meet. We would continue that practice, that procedure, but it's set to be, so no, it's not like this power super house thing. It's just meant to work and be clear.
I understand that, but the question was, do we know what decibel level
we do? We have it all
currently have?
listed. Yes.
What we currently do, and this is not going to go above what we've done in the past.
No. It is the same system that's in Dorothy Hamill, though.
It's going to be louder than what we have currently?
No. We will stay within all ranges, but it is the system that is in Dorothy Hamill. That was the winning bid. It was the same equipment, same kind of equipment, same manufacturer. So the good news is it's somewhere else in town, which means for maintenance, that makes it really easier.
Our amps go to 11. Ms. Stowe?
Second. Just, I think you said it at your opening statement, but just to confirm, if we were to, once we go through this KG&D analysis, redo Cardinal Stadium anyway, this can be moved, and will they move it?
Right, probably not. I mean, it is a piece of equipment that once it's donated and installed and tested and all of that's been taken care of, then it's ours. You know, at that point, everything reverts to us, including, you know, any maintenance, which we would do anyway on even the old piece of equipment, right?
Other questions, comments? I want to thank GAF for coming forward and doing this. As part of our budget process last year, language was put into effect that we'd be able to accept these gifts without having to go all the way through the RTM. Real time saver for everybody involved. This is the first step, as Dr. Gilday mentioned, in refurbishing, I guess we'll call it Cardinal Field, bleachers, scoreboards, team rooms, ADA accessibility. That's all coming, but this is a good step in the right direction. All right, with that, I'd like to call the question. All those in favor of accepting the gift? 7-0, thank you very much, it passes. All right, the next item is the financial and staffing report. I think tonight Dr. Gilday is playing the part of Ms. O'Donnell.
I'll say just what Lori says. If you have any questions, happy to try to answer them.
I don't have a question, but I do have a celebration. I am extremely pleased. If anyone is still here working on this, I don't think so. Extremely pleased about the food services account. And I don't know what it took to get us to this point, but it's been years in the making. So I am very much offering congratulations to you and all the staff.
We'll let John know. He'll be thrilled. Thank you.
And I know it's probably a little early, Dr. Gilday. I know that we have saved some money because of the transportation budget allocation, but we still have $1 million hole for our special ed spending. I would guess as we get into May, we'll have a better sense of how we're going to cover that and what money, if any, will be returning to the town. But I'm hoping you're not telling us we're short money.
Correct. We're not. At this point, we're not telling you that at all.
Hey, we're solvent. Thank you. All right. Other questions on the financial and staffing report? Hearing none, can we get a motion to accept? Dr. Francis, second. Ms. Dayton, you guys are busy tonight. Thank you. All right. All those in favor of accepting the financial and staffing report? Mr. Scherer, you were 7-0. Thank you. All right. And then the last action item would be budget transfers. Get a motion to accept that. Let's put it on the table. Dr. Francis, second from Ms. Olson. Quick hand. All right. I don't know if there's anything to say on budget transfers. Anybody have any questions on budget transfers? No questions, no comments. All right. Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the budget transfers? Passes 7-0. Thank you. All right. We are to agenda planning. I don't know that there was anything we were discussing adding. Madam Seaves? No? Dr. Francis?
I might have missed this, but do we have a plan for when we're going to discuss the master plan again? Master facility plan?
Go over to Kim. Master facility plan for the board level. Do we have anything?
I'm going to have to defer to Lori on that. Not specifically, but I'm sure she's in the works on it. So she's working on the project.
Yeah, and I think I heard earlier today when we were looking at dates for a possible public forum for the Cardinal Field project, that we're looking at a date in May as well for a public project on a public forum on the master facility plan, which would then aid the administration getting that feedback for all the work they need to do over the summer. Ms. Dayton.
I don't have this in my packet. It probably is just not in one. But I'd like to know the dates on the agenda plan document that relate to revisiting the school start time issue, the deliberation, and then I know we're in 2 or 4, but what would be the dates of number 3 and number 4?
Do you want to
The
do
next
that?
two.
Do you want to do that at the work session in the public meeting, or are you thinking the next two public meetings?
No, we're thinking the 3rd and the 16th, because if we are going to have any kind of adjustment or logistics, we want to be able to determine that in June to do over the summer.
Okay.
I didn't, so it's not a change to what was in your document? No.
Okay, so we're following that. All right, any other, Dr. Francis?
Did I read correctly that we're thinking about the light? I thought maybe you were smiling because I was going to ask about Lighthouse Pilot, so I will. Lighthouse project, or whatever it's called.
So
we're talking about for work sessions for next school year.
We do have the 3 scheduled with Nick Caruso from CABE, as well as potentially another national trainer that they have, which is exciting. But if we do decide we want to do a module earlier, we can certainly do that and get the extra date. But right now, at least I know that they're booked for next year with us.
All right, nothing else? All right, somebody want to make a motion to adjourn? Dr. Francis! All right, all those in favor? All right, we are adjourned.